Hello, this is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and welcome to the Dynamic Skills Matrix. In this training, I'm going to show you how to create this incredible skills matrix complete with dynamic skills, adding the ability to add skills, adding employees by team or by name. We'll be able to create projects, filter out projects, and we're also going to be automatically able to create add staff based on the optimal staff just with a click of a button. It's going to be an incredible training. I cannot wait. So let's get started. All right, thanks so much for joining me this week. The Dynamic Skills Matrix, one incredible training. I've got so much to share with you this week. We're going to start out with, of course, what is a skills matrix? I was not sure a while back, but I want to done a lot of research on this, and I'm going to share that with you. Well, certainly a dynamic skills matrix or a skills matrix, in this case, is a framework used to map employees' skills and their levels. It's also a grid that contains information available about that skill in the evaluation. That's what we've done here. We've got a list of employees, a number of skills that we can add, and then we can evaluate it. And what I've done is I've taken this particular skills matrix and I've wrapped it around a project manager so that we can take those skills and we can wrap them inside a project manager, creating projects so we can find out who are the best employees for a specific project, what that would cost, and what is, and all the evaluations. So there's a lot to go over. Of course, in this training, even if you don't want to create a skills matrix, there's so many Excel skills that you're going to learn. I have so many tips, tricks, and techniques to share with you, including we're going to go way beyond the matrix. We're going to be covering conditional formatting, lots of great unique conditional formatting rules, a brand new sum product formula I'm going to go over with you, and we're also going to working with shapes and pictures so we can add them dynamically as you see here in the pictures for the employees. We're going to be adding those. I've also got sorting through VBA, advanced filters, project database management, data mapping, and a ton more. So you won't want to miss this training. I'm going to go over every single line of code, every formula, every conditional formatting, and every format. So you don't want to miss a moment. Grab your coffee, grab your tea or your beverage of choice, and we're going to get started. I bring these to you each and every Tuesday, absolutely free. Even the workbook is free. All you need to do is click the link down below using either your email or your Facebook Messenger, and we're going to get that sent over to you right away. I just ask a few things if you can do to help us out. That'll keep these trainings for free always. Just go ahead and click the subscribe button, and don't forget to click the notification icon bell as well. That'll ensure that you get these trainings to you each and every week and get you a little alert. Also, smash the like button. That really helps us out. And comment below. Also, I have 200 of my most amazing workbooks, and I put them all in a single zip file. And I'm going to make that available for just $77 to you. And that comes with a complete 200 workbook library. And what that means is you can get a single click to open that workbook or a single click to open the training video associated with that. It's a great tool, and that helps us out. It's just 39 cents per workbook. So if you pick it up, that will help us out because I want to get into this training. I've got so much to cover. Let's go over the overview of this application, why it's important for companies, and how it can be used, and of course, all the things that went into this training and this workbook, this application. All right, so basically what we have is a list of employees below here. And we can display their hourly rate, or we can display their staff position, right? Whichever one's important to you. If we choose the hourly rate, we're going to then be able to get a total estimated labor. And that total estimated labor is going to be based on the project days and based on the number of hours. We've got in our admin screen here, I've got the workday hours. So we're going to be able to determine the project cost. And we can also have a labor budget too. So if we have a budget, it's going to help us determine the cost. Okay. We also have this matrix. Basically what we can do is we can rate their skill. For example, Fred here, Fredders, on appliances, he's got a skill of 9, a 1 between 1 and 10. And this, why is this called dynamic? Is because you as a user or a product developer, or as you present this to your customers, can make it fully dynamic to them, meaning we have dynamic levels, right? I have it on 1 through 10, but you can create whatever kind of levels you want in a description. So the way we have it is 1 through 10, 1 being little or no skill, all the way up to 10 highly skilled proficient, So what we want to do is we want to rate our employees level based on that. We want to know what skill. Now, in my sample here, I'm going to use the construction industry. So in my admin screen, I've got a list of skills. These are all dynamic, meaning when you get this workbook, you can put whatever you want in there. So make sure you pick it up. So I used to be in the construction. I used to run a construction company before my Excel days. So we're going to use that as a sample. It's something that I'm familiar with. So we've got all these trades. Let's say you're building new houses, right? You want to build a new house or you're remodeling houses. You may have all of these trades that you want, and you've got a list of maybe 50 employees. Each one has different skills. So when you're building a house, you need to know who to use for what job. And that's why I've done this skills matrix. Skills matrix is great because it maps out not only here the skill that you have here and your employee, and then it adds a grid so you can see who. And then I've added some conditional formatting. A 1, of course, would be a very low skill, while a 10 would be the highest skill available, right? So we know Peter Parker here, he's got a skill of flooring, a very high. He's an expert flooring, and he's expert on drainage. I don't know why you'd have to employ. These numbers are random, obviously, but you get the point, right? So this way you can rate it. Now, I've also done here, these 2 rows right here, this is the minimum skill level. So for example, let's say you've got a job that requires appliances, right? A lot of appliances, right? And you know you need a very, very high skill level, 8, and you need 5 employees, minimum 5 staff, each with 8, right? So if you have that, right? So notice this is green. That means we have that. We have 1 here, 2 here, 3 here, 4 here, and 5. So we're covered that, right? We have 5 employees with at least 8, right? If we go down here, we can see. But here, notice this is 7. We need 7 employees with a grade of 7 or higher, but we don't have it. That's why it's in red. Notice we have 110, 19, 17 here, a few 9s, but we don't have 7 of them, right? We need 7 of them, and we don't quite have that. We only have 6 of them, right? If we only have 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Notice we only have 6 employees with a skill level of 7 or above. So that's why it's in red. Yellow would be exactly the same. So not only do we understand how many of our technicians have the ability, we see in these areas here, in curtains, drainage, and drywall, we have a lower skill level, especially curtains. So we need to know we need to make some employees. Likewise, if you've got a project, let's pull a new project that doesn't have anything. Let's say we decide we're going to add some skills. Let's say we're going to be doing some framing, so we want to do a kitchen. Let's say we're doing a new kitchen, so we're going to add some cabinetry in there. We are going to add some, lighting, right? We need to put lights in our kitchen, and we need to do a few other things. Maybe we're going to do a little bit of plumbing, right? We need a new kitchen sink. So we got these skills. Now I know that this project, I'm going to need about 5 staff on this project, and I'm going to save that project. And I know the project, let's just say 5 days, right? Or whatever the days, and then I'm going to save it again. So I've got these, but now I've got a whole list here, my employee list. I've got all these employees. I've got all these different skills. How do I know which employees to get for the job, right? Well, with our skills matrix, with this kind of, all we need to do is just click generate, and it's going to automatically generate the best staff for the job based on all the skills. Really incredible too, really powerful. So we know, and now let's say we decide, okay, we've got 5, what if our budget's, let's say $6,000, we're over the budget here, right? So our budget's 6,000, our estimated labor is 6,600. So we may need to make adjustments for that. But we realize here that Leslie here, she's got the highest skills at 8, 10, and 10. So she's scoring a 28. She's got all those skills covered, right? We can also put in, our skills here if we want to. Larry's done pretty good, but we see that Greg and Tina doesn't have the skills, but that's still the highest. These are the highest available. So we may want to make adjustments to that, but this kind of tool gives us, and it shows us the true power of Excel. And when you learn all the skills in creating these, as opposed to just downloading this and start trying to use it, what if you learn the skills that help you make these workbooks, right? You can then create these and put them as part of a larger project and sell them for passive income. So not only do I want to teach you Excel, I want to teach you the tools, tricks, and techniques to be successful with Excel. So that's why these videos are so important, because not only learning these applications and downloading them, using them, but learning how to build them yourself. So that's really critical. So that's what we're going to do today. So we get an idea, right? So what if we want to add a team? Or let's say I've got a new project here, and I know I've got teams. I want to add team 1. I can just click adding a a team, or maybe I want to add an individual employee. Maybe I want to add individual staff. I can do that here, simply adding different staff if they haven't already been added, clicking adding, right? Maybe I got a bunch of employees and I like all these employees as a team and I want to create a set of teams. So I've got this list of employees and I like them. I want to create, let's just call this electrical team, right? We can create an electrical team here, right? And automatically this electrical team will be saved. So I call this electrical, right? If I spelled it right. Nope, I didn't. Of course, let's try that again. Electrical. Okay, so we've got electrical. Now I want to save this as a team. It's automatically going to be saved as a team. So the next time that I want to use this team on a new job, all I need to do is simply click team and then add in electrical here and then click add, and it's going to add all those employees based on that. So we can create teams. Super powerful. We want to list out projects by completed, right? Maybe we only want to show those completed projects. Maybe we only want to show projects at a certain type. So we can do that, or we can list all of them. That's going to be using an advanced filter. So we've got advanced filters here. I've got data mapping here. I've got so much. I want to get right to it. So that kind of gives you an overview, rough overview of some of the skills. Now we're going to go into this application in full detail and show you everything that's here. You notice that, so here we've got some project, but notice there's nothing here, or there's only one here, right? So why would there not be any additional fields here? Because we haven't added some skills. So as soon as we add it, if we try to add the same skill, of course it's going to say the skill's already been added. If we try a different skill, it'll let us add it. And so as we add the skills, it'll add the skill grades according to for each employee automatically. So we've got a lot to cover on this. All right, so let's get to it before we do. First of all, we've got project information here, right? We can save individual project information. So certainly we need basically a table to save that project information, that main project information. Now for every single project, here's some main information. We've got the product description, we've got the number of required staff on there, we've got a budget that we can put in if we have a budget. So we have a lot of information on it. So we got to save that inside a database. So once we click save, we need to save that main information. We're going to save that here in something called projects. So project 14, we have all that information. Here's the one I just saved, project 11. So that main information gets saved. But as you'll notice, we have other information that must get saved. I've got to know the employees that are on that particular project. I've also got to know the skills that are assigned to that specific project. So we have two other databases or lists or tables, however you want to call them, that are associated with this project. So each project has its ID. For example, this particular project is project ID number 11. Okay. So inside, opposed to our main one, we have two sub-trainings, sub-databases here for this training, and that's going to be called Project Skills List. So number 11 has two different skills, landscape and masonry. Notice we have a project ID of 11, landscape, and then I've got some other information here. So we have a minimum skill level, a minimum staff, the column, and the database row here. So basically it's this. So if we start adding, I know I need a skill level in this case of, let's say 5, and I need 2 staff to have that skill level. And I've got another skill level, let's say of 8, and I need 2 staff to have that. So I've got that covered. We've got, 3 at 8 or 4 at 8, so we're good. If I change that to 10, it's going to be a problem. We don't have enough skills for that. But if I update that and save that project, it's going to also save this information here inside the project skills. Down here, we now have those numbers here inside the landscape. So that's all saved inside here. So that covers our skills. So these skills are tied to a specific project. I also, of course, have those employees. I've got to save those employees. Who is assigned to this project, right? Whose skills do I want to show up? And I've got that inside here, our project employees. So again, going down here to project 11, we see here 11, we have all these employees assigned to this particular project. Each employee comes with a name, a rate, and of course, where they're located. These are from formulas, right? So we've got a rate. So let's go up here. We've got here employee rate, how much per hour, and their position. This information, their rate and their position, is going to come from another table. Now, also another table in this side skills, we have to know what skills each one is. I need to know that Fred is at level 9 on landscaping and Mark is at level 1 on landscaping, right? So to know that, that's going to be saved inside the employee information. So this is our employee information. We have an employee ID, an employee name, their position, their hourly rate, if they've been assigned to a team, right, what team they've been assigned by, their email. This could help for some automation in case we have a project, we want to email them. A picture associated with them. Notice we have the picture, a picture file name. And then, of course, we have all of the up to 20 different skills here, 20 different skills. And then we have a total skill rating, and I'll be going into that a little bit later on inside this training. Okay, so we're going to go over that. So we've got all the information. So this particular skills matrix is going to pull information from all of those sources, all 4 of those sources. It's going to pull this information from our projects table. It's going to pull this information from our project skills table. It's going to pull this information from our project employees table. It's going to pull this information from our employees table. So also we'll be able to increment those if we want to update the skills on any, I forgot to show you this. So we can update that in case we have a change, or we can downgrade them. We can't go beyond 1, obviously. But so we can change those skills levels just with this, or just simply by entering the number. That works as well. So that's no problem. So we've also got conditional formatting. Also, we can show the different positions, or we can show the rate just by this. It's going to alternate between their position or their hourly rate in case you want to see both of them. Great. So we kind of covered the overview. Let's take a quick look inside the admin screen and see what that is. Now we have our list of skills. This is fully dynamic. So as I change them here, they're also going to be able to change inside the employees. They're linked. So if we take a look at this, they're linked. We see that this is indirect, admin, column C, and column -4. What do we mean by column -4? Okay, so this is a good way to do it. So we've got appliances. This is located on C4, right? So basically, whatever's in C4 here, we want to put over here inside employees. But I don't want to put C4, C5, C6, C7 because that's a little bit long. So how do I know it's C, so how do I get 4, 5, 6, 7, right? Basically, it's always going to be C. So if I know this is column 8, right? Then what is column 8 -4? Well, that's 4. Column 9 -4 is 5. So it's a great way of getting 4, 5, 6 all the way along. So if I drag that, I know that the existing column is 8, and I want to extract the number 4. I have to subtract 4. If I know this column is 9 and I subtract 4, I'm going to get 5. So we can use that along with an indirect formula to pull that. So again, indirect, admin column C. This won't change, right? Column, the current column, -4 will get us, in this case, 4, in the next case, 2. And then, of course, it's true because it's going to be A1 style. So once we have that, all we need to do is just simply drag that all the way over to all of our skills, and it's going to automatically update very, very easily. So basically, we're turning from a multiple row, single column table here into multiple columns here inside employees. So that way, anytime we make a change here, it is automatically going to be changed here on our employees. So we've linked up that inside our admin screen. I've also got the project statuses, and now notice the project statuses of all stats. This is going to include 2 named ranges. Why is that? Because when I assign a project staff, when I assign a project status, I want to choose from a drop-down list, a dynamic drop-down list based on these. What do I mean by that? Here's a project status here. Completed, estimate, and progress, right? I don't necessarily want to show all statuses, though. That's not going to be helpful. I only want to show. However, inside this drop-down list, when I want to list specific projects based on their status, I want to show that including all statuses. So maybe I only want to show completed, or maybe I want to show all of them. Right? I can do that with this. So if I create 2 named ranges based on this single column, I can do that. And the same thing for project types. So how do we do that? Well, if we look in the formula, name manager, I'm going to drag this over here, and we see that we have status here under the project status here and project status with all. So project status is basically a named range, a dynamic named range using offset formula. Zooming in, you see E5, and then 3 commas counting a E5 through E23. So we're simply counting all of those with cells. Now we're going to do the same thing for project with all, except in this case, we're going to start out with row number 4, not number 5. What that's going to do is allow us to encompass the all statuses. And we've done the exact same thing for project types. We've got 2 under one project type containing just the types, and another one with the all, right? So we've got 2 of them here. Notice the dancing ants around that here. It's going to allow us to do that. So we have both of them here available to us. So we can use a single column, one that contains just the data and one that contains all of them, all we need is 2 different named range. And then we have employee positions here, and this allows us to employ. And then we have our levels that we have, right? You can create your own levels. And I've got a few other things here, very simple. I've got the workday hours. And this will allow us to calculate the actual skill amount, total estimated labor amount, right? If I know this project's going to take 5 days, and I know that they're working 8 hours a day, all I need to do is take this hourly rate here and multiply it times the number of hours, times the number of days, and that's going to get us our total estimated budget. And that's just what I've done in here. So I've taken this here, and we're giving it a name called workday hours. Then once inside our skills matrix, we take a look at the total estimated labor. We see if B6 equals 1, and why is that important? And I'll show you that. Now, basically, notice that I only want to show that total estimated labor if the hourly rates have been listed, because I need these hourly rates. They would not be listed if I click staff position, right? Then we have the positions, right? In that case, this particular option group, notice we have an option group here, and we click on the format control, and we see that this tied to cell B6. So B6 is either going to display 2 or it's going to display 1, right? If I click hourly rate, it's going to display 1. If I click staff position, it's going to display 2. So I only want this total estimated to calculate when we have displayed the hourly rate. If it's displayed staff position, we're not going to show anything. Take a look in this. Labor is nothing because I'm just showing there. I don't want to show that. However, if I've clicked on hourly rate, this is going to be 1, and then we can continue on with the formula. If it equals 1, then I want to show that formula, W3, which is the number of project days, and I want to multiply that times the workday hours. And I want to multiply all that times the sum of F9 through F68, and that's basically all of, should probably make this 99, using enough here, right? So that is basically all of the employee rates, the hourly rates. So that's all we need to do to simply calculate it. If it's anything other than 1, right, 2, in this case, show nothing. So this particular formula is going to allow us to create the total estimated labor for a project. This really helps us out. If we know we've got a budget of $10,000, and then we know we've got a little bit of room in our budget to add an employee, so maybe we can do that. All we need to just click Greg Perkins and add him here, and that's going to increase it. So now we're a little bit closer on the budget. So adding him is very, very easily, but we see Greg doesn't really have the skills necessary here, so we may want to add more. Okay, great. So that's a really, really helpful. Let's get into some of the conditional formatting, and then we're going to move into the VBA. So we're going to highlight that and go into the home. And I'm going to drop this down for a moment. We're going to be working with conditional formatting and manage rules. And we take a look, we've got several rules here. The first of which is this one here. When I select a cell, what I want to do is I want it to go green. If you've seen that in the past here, I want to select it and I want it to go green automatically, right? Just like that. So how are we going to do that? Well, the best way to do that is just simply use conditional formatting. Now I need to know both the row and the column of this. When I select a cell, VBA is going to tell us that this is row 10 and this is row, and this, the level column is 9. So when I select that cell, we see that our row is 11 and our column is 8. If I know both the row and the column, we can use conditional formatting to apply that to only the cell that contains, in that case, that has a row of 11 and a column of 8. So that is with conditional formatting. So when we manage those rules, we see here we've got those using the and inside our formula to determine which cells format. We're going to do B9. B9 will be the row. B9 must equal the row. And B10 must equal the column. And then we're going to format with that green here. And then when we go in here, we see that it's going to be applied to all the way from G9 through Z99. That is how we automatically, it is VBA, remember it's VBA, we'll get into that in a little bit. VBA that places whatever column you select into B9. VBA that places whatever row that you selected into B9 and column into B10. Okay, great. I've also got, notice we've got a really cool graded schedule. This one here is going to let us know we've got a graded color scale. So when we edit this rule, we see that we've got a color white all the way to green. So this is going to give us our grading. It is a 2-color scale that we're using. Our minimum is going to be 1, right? We only want to color cells that are 1, and our maximum is going to be 10. That is the same one. We could just as easily use a max formula here if we wanted to, and we could link this to a specific cell here inside our A1. So we could link this to our 1 here, or whatever we want to do. We could link it and make it even more dynamic. I've just set it to 1 to make it a little bit easier to see the less formulas. So that is an option. We also have 10, right? So we know the maximum, and I want this maximum color to this green. If I were to change the colors here, it would automatically change inside that. So that is going to give us our color code. So that way, the more skills an employee has in a specific skill or trade, the darker the green is going to go and the lighter the white. So notice that's how it works. Relatively simple on this one. And then I've got another one here. Let's take a look at this one. And this one is for conditional formatting. Notice how those rows have alternating colors. So basically what I am doing is I'm going to color those even rows color of white. So E9, but I want to make sure that E9, the first row in our applied to, E9 here, 9, does not equal empty, and then the mod of row 2 equals 0. This is for even rows. And I'm going to give it a format, and we're just coloring it white. I'm giving it a fill of white color. That is it. So that's all I'm doing. Why is that? Because that way all of the other rows are colored this green. I want this dark green. And if we take a look back inside the conditional formatting here, so we have this nice color. So see this how it goes to white, but not here because there's no employees here, right? So one of the conditions, there's 2 conditions. One, I wanted it for only for even rows, and 2, the other condition, E needed to contain a value. That way those 2, in this condition, these aren't met. That's why it's given this color. Now we could make them all colored as we wanted to. There's more conditional formatting that I could be doing on this. I may do it. In fact, we may be doing that on our Patreon. If you like the screen and you want to see me add something, don't forget we've got a brand new Patreon. And that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be every single week, I'm going to take this application and I'm going to build on it, but I'm going to build on it based on your suggestions. If you want me to add a feature, you want me to fix something, or maybe you want me to focus on a specific app, I'm doing that inside our Patreon. Every week I'm creating a brand new video and a brand new download invite. It starts with just a few dollars a month. So check out the Patreon. I'll include the links down below. Okay, so we understand the conditional formatting, and I've got a little bit more conditional formatting for the employees here. So when we can go into conditional formatting and we manage rules, we see a few of them. I also want to know, in this case, let's take a look at this. E9 does not equal empty. E9 is, of course, the first row in our table. Notice there's no $ before the 9. It's not absolute, and that means that it can be for every row that it's applied to. If we look under the format, again, we see that we have some borders here and some fonts here, and so that's going to help us out, right? So let's take a look at this one. What do we have? I've got this colored border. Take a look at this. Like, all I want is this dotted border, but I only want to show this particular border. That's it. This border only for cells that don't have there. So what does that mean? You see, that's only for column E9 through E94. Notice this dotted line here ends. There's no line here, but only here. That's how we do it. We have it applied, but only for those with the employees within the column. As soon as it ends, as soon as there's no employee, there's no dotted line here. So we want to create this dynamic table looking using conditional formatting. So we've done the same thing for this one here, but this one here is going to be, again, E9. This one's going to give it this lower border here, but I want this lower border to be applied for both E and F, columns E and F. Therefore, when we look in the applies to, we see E9 through F94. So it's going to be applied to both columns. This one's just a single column. I also want to, when I select an employee, I want to highlight that row. And when I do that, VBA is going to take that particular row that we've selected, and it's going to place it in B8. So we click here, we see B8 has that selected, and it's given that format. Basically, it is a fill of this fill effects. We've given it 2 colors here, and also we've given it a font. That font is bold, and that font is white. And that way, as soon as we select it, it is VBA that's going to take that and put that directly inside this row right here, B8. B8 is going to take on that. As soon as I select it, B8 is going to take on that. It's also going to display this X and allows us to delete employees. So if I want to delete an employee, I can do just that, easily removing employees. So many features on this. So we can do that too. And I can also, of course, add and delete it. If we want to delete a skill, we can delete a skill too, very, very easily. So very, hence the word dynamic, because it is a very dynamic skills matrix, meaning you can change any aspect of it you want. Of course, when you get it, you can even update it even more, but I've made it pretty dynamic as it is. So many features in this. Okay, so we've gone over conditional formatting for both the table. We have a similar conditional formatting here for odd rows here. Now take a look at this. I've got some conditional formatting. First of all, what I want to do is I want to sum, assuming that E9 is not blank, I want to sum all the skills. So let's go into a project with a lot more things. So in this case, what I want to do is I want to know who's got the highest skills, right? In this case, I want to give them a green flag. Those have medium or average skills based on all the other skills in the project. I want to give it a yellow flag. And those with the lowest skills, I want to give them a red flag. So the first thing we have to do is sum up all the skills using sum, and only if, of course, E9 contains a value. That's going to sum them all up. Once I've summed them all up, I can then add a conditional formatting. And if you'll see here, we've got icon sets here. So if I want to add an icon, all I've done is simply added a conditional formatting using this icon set. That's just what I've done inside the conditional formatting. So I've added an icon set here, and it's going to apply to A9 through all the way A99. That's it. Relatively simple. So when we see that, we can even judge it. This is automatic, right? So it's based on percentages, so we can change that. If it's greater than 67% based on all the weighted average of all those, it is going to be higher. Now we can base them on numbers, or we can use a formula, but I've just used percentage. Those with greater than 33% is going to be inside the yellow flag, and less than that is going to be a red flag. So we're basing it on third percentages, third and third and third. So those in the highest third are going to have the green flag, those in the middle are going to have the yellow, and the lowest in the third is going to have that red flag, letting us know who is where, who's got the highest. Great. Okay, great. So we've also got conditional formatting here. Again, what I want to know here is I've got all of these skills down here. Now, in this case, notice this is called minimum skill level. So the minimum skill level is 7. Now, I need 7 staff with this minimum skill level. I need 7, the minimum staff at the skill level. I know that I need 7 staff that has 7, but I don't have that, right? So it's colored in red. I need 8 with 8. Now, I barely cover that. That means I've got exactly 8. I'm not going above. But in this case, I need 2 staff with 2. Well, I've got more than that. Obviously, there's a lot more staff with 2, so that's no problem. But if I were to change it to, let's say, 10, and I were to change this to, let's say, 8, obviously, I don't have 8 staff that have a 10 score, so it's going to automatically change. We're going to use conditional formatting for that as well. So we go into the manage rules. We see 3 different rules, and there's 2 different conditions. And so let me take a look at this formula here. And, of course, we're using and because there's more than one condition. What I want to do is I want to count all of the cells with values from G8 to 9. I want to know all of them. I want to make sure it's greater than 0, meaning I only want to count those with values. What does that mean? It means we don't want to apply this. Let's pull on another project here. If there's nothing here, I don't want to apply them to things without the values here. I only want to apply it to projects with values. So back in this project again. So I do want to do that. So we want to make sure that the first condition is that there's actually values inside that column. So that's the first argument, right? We want to make sure that that's greater than 0. The second argument is here G7, meaning G, it's going to go for every column, but it's always going to be row 7 inside our range. G7 does not equal empty, right? I want to make sure that we have a minimum skill level. Column 7 contains our minimum skill level, so that is required. We cannot apply conditional formatting if we do not have a minimum skill level. So that is all. I also need to know how many staff that we need at that skill level. If we don't have that minimum staff, which is in column 8, then we cannot apply these. So also G, every column on row 8 that is inside our range, also has to have a value. Okay, so those are all these 3 are required, or we cannot apply it. What else? Then, in case it's red, what I want to make sure is then I want to count if, making the count all the numbers within that column G. if that number is greater than or equal to whatever is in G7, right? So that's what we're going to count if. I only want to know how many skills are above. For example, let's take this column, curtains here, right? I want to know all of the skills that are greater than or equal to the minimum skills. Meaning I don't want to, this is 4, 3. I don't want to count that. I only want to count 10, 9, and 7, greater than or equal. So this is going to be counted. This is going to be counted in row 19, and the last one, this is going to be counted. So I only want to count those above or equal to the 7 skill level. And I want to make sure, how many we count, let's escape out of there, however many we count of that are greater than or equal to that skill level, I want to make sure that that number is less. If that number is less than G8, meaning let's say we've counted, in this case 7, there's not that many skills that have 7 or above, right? So it's less than that. What do I mean by that? Let's just take a quick look at it, close it out. So we're looking at this column right here, column J, right? I want to know how many are equal to or above 7. So we've got 1, 2, 3 here, these 3 right here, right? We have this one here, 4, we have 5 here, and we have 6 here. Notice there's 6, right? 6 employees have a level of 7 or above, but I need 7. I don't want 6, I need 7. So if it's less, then we know to color it red. So inside this, we know it is less. If it's less than G8, less than the number, then color it red. So in this case, it's less, right? In our yellow, it's simply everything else is exactly the same. In this case, it is equal. That means the same number of employees that are at that skill level is equal. In this case, 8. So that means we exactly have 8 employees with 8 or above. With 8 or above, we have exactly 8. So that's going to be colored yellow. And in our green, we have simply greater than. Everything else is the same, except we have more, in this case, like let's say column, any column that's green, we have more than that number of employees. There are more than 8 employees, or more than 6 employees with skill level 6 or above. So this is greater than whatever's required. So that's all we have to do to give it that nice color so we can quickly see which skills in this project are going to require different employees with greater skills. Or we know that these particular project, especially curtains and drywall, we don't have enough employees with the right amount of skills. Obviously, we don't have 50 employees, but you get the point, right? So I'm just trying to give you that. But of course, if we have, 10, or we change this to like say 5 staff, maybe we do. Let's go with 2 staff. There we go. So we do have 2 staff. So if you change this, we know the number of staff that is required to have it. So it's very, very helpful. Okay, great. So we've covered really good over the conditional formatting. As far as the selected row, we also have the same thing under projects, right? The same thing when I select a project, I want that project is going to be based on here the selected project row, which is located in B2. So that's going to be conditional formatting, same as what we have in place. Okay, great. So let's take a look. Let's get started in the VBA and let's show some of the things that we have. When I select a particular employee, I want this X to show. This is a specific shape. All I've done is add an icon onto this on a background of a shape. So we say it's a group of 2 of them here, and they're together. And I've assigned a macro to this. So it's basically 2 shapes here, 1 picture and 1 shape, and I've given it a macro, right? I've given this a name called delete employee button. And if we drill into one of the shapes and we click assign macro, we see that it is a macro called project remove employee. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the VBA that is going to help us with this so we can assign this. Let's zoom back out to 100. So let's take a look so we can display this. And also the VBA, when I make a selection, I've got another X here. It's going to allow us to delete a specific skill on a project. So that's the VBA I want to show you right now. And that's based on selection change. So we're going to go into the VBA and take a look at it. Inside the developers and inside VBA, we go Alt F11 will get you there. And as you see, I've got several sheets here, but we're going to focus on the skills matrix sheet. That's the one I want to focus on. And I'll just zoom over and let's bring this back to the left here. We're over the right. And I want to look at instead, this is worksheet change, but I want to scroll down and focus on selection change. This is when we make a change to a worksheet. This is when we make a selection change. So this is what I want to focus on the code here. One of the first things you want to write in order to avoid bugs is target.countLarge is greater than 1. This first line of code here is going to help us. If the user selects a large section of cells, or at least greater than 1, we want to exit out of the sub. Keep in mind that if you have merged cells, you might need to change this number. Anytime you have shapes, like when we select, notice that we've got a group here to show up, we've got something here to show up, and we've got, when we select a skill, something here. So the first thing, when you have these specific shapes that are only for a single purpose, only to delete an employee, only to increase or decrease a skill level, or only to delete a skill, the first thing you want to do is on selection changes to clear or not delete, but basically hide those shapes on selection change. So that means whenever I select something else, it's going to be hidden. So that's what I want. Something else is going to be hidden. So the first thing we want to do is hide all those shapes, but we only want to hide them if they're currently visible. So first of all, if shapes delete employee button, this is the one for deleting the employee. If it's equal true, meaning it is visible, if it's currently visible, then hide it. We're using this line, simply going to hide that shape. And we're going to repeat this step for both the delete skill button and the level change. And that basically means automatically when we make any selection change, regardless, the first thing we're going to do is hide all of those if they're visible. Only if they're visible, we're going to, that way we don't need to run the code if they're not visible. So once we do that, we can then move on now on selection of a project. When we select a project, we want to do a few things. If the user makes a selection from D7 through D99, and that's going to be here, D7 through D99, but only if there's a value inside D. If there's something that's empty, there's nothing we want to do. So in this case, what I want to do is I basically want to find that project, and I want to place the ID located in B3 and the row that's been selected in B2. So we do just that with the following code. So first of all, we want to make sure that D contains a value, right? If they select on a cell that contains nothing in there, there's nothing we can do. So we want to make sure that D in the target row, the row that we've selected, is not empty. Next up, what I want to do is I want to dimension a variable called found project. I want to look for the project that we've selected. I want to look for this name. Where is John's Kitchen? I need to know what the ID is. Sometimes we put the ID in a hidden cell. In this case, what I'm going to do is just look for the name, and I'm going to look for it inside projects. So I've created a named range called project name. If we go into the formulas and the name manager, and we look inside the project here called project name. So I've got this dynamic, and this is basically all of the projects. So what I want to do is I want to use the find command. Inside this find, I want to look for the name. I want to find, where is that found? Once I find the row, if I know it's on row 5 using VBA, then whatever is located in column A and the row, it's going to extract our project ID. I'm going to take that project ID, I'm going to place it directly inside B3. Once it's in B3, then I need to determine, I want to load that project, and I want to bring all the information in, and that is going to use, I need a row for that, and we're going to use the match for that. So basically, I'm going to take that project ID, which is another named range, just like project name, same thing. If we go into the name manager and go into, this time, project ID, we see that we've got a dynamic named range, just like the name, except this is focused on column A. So again, I'm going to use a match formula, match whatever's in B3 in the project ID, and then I'm going to add 3 because I want the row, right? The first one starts on row 4, so I want the row. That's going to automatically extract it. So now I have the actual row. Project ID 3 is located in row 6. If we look at our projects, we see project ID is 3. Once I have that, I can load up the information. So inside our VBA, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to determine found project as a range, because I need to find that project. We're going to set that range, found project, is going to equal to projects named range, project name. That's the dynamic named range I just showed you. I'm going to look for something inside that. What am I looking for? The target value. The target value is the project name that the user selected. In this case here, when I select Starbucks build, that project value is called Starbucks build. I'm going to look for that inside this list. Once it's found, it's going to determine the row that it's been found on. So the next thing is, if found project is nothing, this means it's not been found, right? If for some reason it's not found, found is nothing, it didn't find anything, we're going to let the user know project has not been found. And I guess we can exit the sub out of that, right? So we don't need to move on. If project's not been found, we cannot load it up. Okay, assuming that it has been found, else here, right? What I want to do is then add the target row. Remember, I want to place the row using conditional formatting inside B2. Add selected row number, okay? So we add that selected row number in B2. I also want to add the project ID. Remember I said once it's been found, we can then take the row of that and whatever's in column A of that found row, and we're going to place that directly in B3. And then we can run the macro, which we'll get into in just a bit, called project load. That macro is going to load up the project. But we'll get into that in just a moment because I want to continue on with all the code inside the selection change event. Now we also have on employee selection, right? When I select an employee, I want a few things to happen, right? I want to know that row that we selected is going to have to go into B8. I also want to display this delete employee button. So those two things are going to happen. So that's what we do here. If the user makes a selection on this time E through F, anything through E through F, and we need to make sure that E contains a value. If they select something other outside that, nothing's going to happen. So we need to make sure that if they're going to make a selection anywhere between E and F, E9 through F, and we want to make sure that E contains a value, then we can know that we have a selected employee. So that's just what we've done here. E9 through F is nothing, and E contains a value in the target row, then do something. First thing, take that row that we selected and put it in B8. Add selected row, add selected row. So once we've added selected row, then we want to work with the delete employee button. So this time show delete employee. Okay, we'll call this group because it's a group of shapes, right? There's two shapes. So with delete employee button, I want to display it. Where do I want to display it? I want to display it in column F, the left position of column F, and the top position of column F. And then I want to make sure it's displayed. It's currently hidden. Remember, we've hidden it if they select anything up here, so now we need to display it. MSO visible equals true. That actually displays it. And that's going to, so as soon as the user displays it, it's going to display directly in column F. And of course the macros that's been tied to that. So that's all we have to do on employee selection. On skill selection, something very, very similar. Now all I've done with the skill selection is created another shape, but it's kind of a rectangular. Here in this shape we see it's a parallelogram that we've added, and then I've added that X onto that. So in this case, what I want to do is based on the selected column, I want to display it and I want to move it over. Notice the column is here in column I, but I want to move it over because it's kind of this particular column has, the text has been moved over. How do we do that? Well, we use this here, the angle counterclockwise. That's how we get that text to show up. If we click format the cell alignment, we see that we have automatically this text is located here. Notice it's angled 45 degrees to the right. So that's how we do that here. If we wanted to change the degree if we wanted to. So I want to display this X. If the user makes a selection anywhere from G6 all the way to Z6, but I want to make sure that there's actually a value. So that's how we can execute this. G6 through Z6, and I want to make sure that row 6, using cells, row 6, and whatever the column they've selected, we need to make sure that that is not empty. So on that selection, again, I want to take the column, also using conditional formatting, and place it in B7. This time we have conditional formatting, exactly the same as we have, but this one's based on B7. So we have conditional formatting. As soon as I select something else, it's going to be gone. All right, so we have that here. So then all you want to do is display that delete skill button on the left of the column and over. Remember, the column, because of the text, I don't want to display up here. I want it to move it over. So I'm going to move it over 37 pixels to the right. To do that, we can take the left position of whatever column they've selected and moving it over to the right 37. And I also want to display it exactly on the top of row 6 and making it visible. Okay, great. Now what about on skill level selection? Let's put skill level skill. We also have another group here. Take a look at this. If I make a selection here, in fact, I want to make sure if I make a selection here, I want it to show up. I also want to make sure that in that column we have a value. So I'm going to double check that. Row 6 and whatever column they've selected, I want to make sure there's a value. This shouldn't show up. I'll fix that. I don't want it to show up. It's going to create an issue. Hey, see that? Debug. I don't want to create an issue because there's nothing in the target column. So we're going to fix that up right now. I'm going to show you how we do that because I knew that was going to happen because there's no skill to assign it to. So how do we avoid that? Well, we make sure that inside that column, inside row 6, contains a value. So we could do that here. So let's take a look inside, back inside here where we were, right on the skills matrix here, inside selection change. And we're going to focus on this area here, skill selection. So we know that G, they're going to make selections, and we want to make sure that E contains a value, right? We need to have an employee, and we need one other condition. And Cells, what is the row? That row is row 6. What is the target column? Target dot column dot value does not equal empty. That's how we're going to avoid that, right? So now we want to make sure that we have that. So now if we look at that here, see, nothing's going to show up only when we select an actual cell that has a value, right? So now there's nothing we can do. So that's exactly what we want. We only want that displayed when there's a value in row 6 of the target column. And then I want to display this group. This group is called level change group. That is the name that I've given to the group of those two shapes, which is just simply two triangle shapes. And so here we have B9. I want the target row. Remember, I mentioned that to you. We're going to place that row in B9, and we're going to place that column in B10. So we've done just that here. B9, right, and B10 take on the row and the column when we make a selection. Okay, and after that, that'll trigger, of course, a conditional formatting. Then I need to place this group here. So inside the code, we see we do that. Then what I focus on is with the shapes, that level change group. I want to place that on the left. It's going to be based on that target cell, but I don't want to place it directly on that cell. I want to move it away one column to the right. So we're going to use the offset function. We're not offsetting it any rows above or below, but I am going to offset the column. I want it 1 to the right. If I were going to place this to the left, it would be -1. And then I want to place it I don't want directly on. I want to move it a little bit more over to the right. So we're going to add +1 pixel onto that. Now the top position here is also, I want to move that top one column to the right, but I want to place it a little bit higher than that. So we're going to subtract 2. The last thing is we're going to display it as true. Now that's great. So we know how to do the selection change. Okay, let's take a look. So that's all the selection change based on, of course, the selected employee, the selected skill, or the selected skills level cell here. Now what I'd like to do is show you exactly how we can add new projects, save projects, and load projects exactly on a selection change. So the first one would be loading the project. How do we load the project, or how do we save a project? And of course, we're going to get into then generating the optimal staff. So let's get into the VBA focusing on those projects, and that's the project macros. So we're going to start from the top and just move down here. We've got some variables that are going to help us out for the macros inside this module. So let's go over some of those variables. We have the last row is long. We're going to be using advanced filter, so I need to know the last row, last results row, when we get those results from the advanced filter. We might loop through those results, so we're going to use the result row for the loop. And I want to know what row that project is on, and I want to know what column we're going to run through the project columns. We're going to use data mapping. I'll be showing you that in a moment. So we need to run through that. I also need to know the skill database. Remember, we have a separate database based on those skills, and I want to know this column for that. And I want to know the skill row and the skill column. What column have we selected? What column? As we move through those, we're going to need to know the skill row and the skill column. And I want to know the last skill column, right? If I'm going to be looping through, I need to know the last skill column. What is this? Notice because they're dynamic, our columns are different. Sometimes our skills are going to go all the way to here. Sometimes we're going to only have 3, or it really depends on the type of the project. So we need that skill column as dynamic here. And I want to know the last skill column. So the employee database row, I want to know where those employees, if I need to save that information, the employee database column, employee row, and the employee column, and the last employee row. Those are all long variables. I have a few string variables. We're going to be using the picture file as a string. That file, particular file, is going to be that file that we're located here. That is the file name. I also need to know the folder. What is that folder? Where are our employees located? If we see here, I've got my employee names, pictures located in a specific folder called employee pictures. Now, if you want all these pictures, I'm going to include them also on our Patreon. Any icons or resources or pictures, I put that also on our Patreon. So even for just a few bucks a month, you can get all these additional resources that go beyond the workbook. So I'll make sure that that's available for you, for our Patreon members as well. Okay, so we have our folder. This folder we need to decide as a string variable. And then the folder combined with the picture file itself is going to be our full file path. So those 3 variables are here: picture file, the picture folder, and the picture path as a string. I also want to know the project ID as a string and the employee picture as a shape. We're going to loop through those pictures, adding new pictures. Remember, we saw each individual employee picture, so we need these pictures as shapes. All right, great. So let's go. The first thing is what I want to do is I want to load the list of projects, right? If I load, even if I just double click on this, it's going to load those pictures. If I have a filter like completed, right, I need to know only those projects that were completed, or those in the estimate, I want to know only those. It's going to allow us to filter it by this type. So what we want to do is we need a macro to do that that's going to actually load it. So I want to do that. But what I want to do is going to come directly from our projects. Notice we have all of our projects. What I want to do is maybe we're going to filter by type, or maybe we're going to filter by status, right? So we have those two filters by here we have all statuses, or we have all types. So we need to filter that, and we're going to use an advanced filter. But what we can do to make it easy on us is use a formula based on this. If it's all statuses, meaning there's going to be no criteria. If it's all types, there's none. But if we do select a type, I want to know just those types. So how do we do that? Well, it's going to come inside of the criteria. And we've got two criteria set up, one for type and one for status. And notice commercial is showing here because I've selected commercial. If I were to change this to all types, our criteria is going to change to nothing. So how do we do that? Well, it's a simple formula. Inside the skills matrix, if the skills matrix equals admin G4, then show nothing. What's in admin G4? Well, admin G4, you see, is our all types, right? All types. If it's equal to all types, then don't create any criteria, use it blank. Same thing for status. If it's E4, use all types. So otherwise, show it. Otherwise, if it's not all statuses, or if it's not all types, then I want to know exactly what is in here. Like in this one, industrial, right? I need to know what's in here. So that's just what we've done here. If the skills matrix D5 equals G4, meaning the all types, then show nothing. Otherwise, show what is in D5. And we've done the exact same thing for status, except this is based on E4. If it's all skills, then show nothing. Otherwise, show whatever's in D4. Once we have this criteria set up, we can run an advanced filter based on our project names, right? We can just use our project names and project types all the way to status, or we can use all. And then what I want to do is create it. So I only want to show those projects names that have the industrial. Notice that we see project 7 and project 12. Project 12 is industrial, and project 7 here is industrial. So I only want to show those two using our results. And I'm going to take those results and I'm going to bring them directly inside here. First, clearing out all the projects and showing them here. And that's just what we do inside the macro. So the first thing what we want to do is we want to, inside the skills matrix, I want to clear everything out, including the selected project row. I want to clear that selected projects based on B2. So we need to clear that as well. I also want to clear out everything from D7 through D99. So we're going to clear all those existing projects. Then we're going to focus on our projects sheet primarily. So with the project sheet, this is the name that's been assigned to this one here. I want to determine the last row of that. Then if its last row is less than 3, we're going to exit the sub. We're going to run an advanced filter, and that advanced filter is going to be based on our original data. If we look inside our projects, A3 all the way through I, right? So in this case, A3 through I in the last row, that is our original data. We're going to run an advanced filter based on that. We're going to copy those results, and it's going to be based on that criteria. That criteria is located in M2 through N3. Notice M2 through N3. And I want those results to go in a single cell called Q2. Then I want to determine the last row of those results based on the last row of Q. If that last row is less than 3, then exit the sub. That means there are no results. If there are results, we're going to take those results from Q3 through Q in the last row, and we're going to bring them over directly in through D7 and the last results row plus 4. Why am I adding 4? If you notice, our results start on D7. D7, our results are starting right here inside there. D7 is where I want that first one to go. So if our first one's in D7 here, but inside our projects, our first result here is in 3, I need to add 4 to compensate for that difference. So that's just what I did here, add 4. And that's going to bring all the project names. So it's going to list of project names. Okay, great. So we have that. That's the first one we're going through. That's going to load all of the projects in. And we want to run that anytime we add a filter in. So that filter, anytime we make a change event on D4 through D5 is when we want that macro to run. And that's focused on defense. So if we go into the skills matrix, and we've already focused on the selection change, but this is actually the worksheet change. On D4 through D5, if the user makes any change to these cells, I then want to run the macro called project load list. That is the exact macro that we just went over. Okay, great. So what about a new project? New project, simply when I click here, a new project, I just want to basically clear out the project ID, clear out the selected row, clearing out any skills or anything else, and I want to clear out all of the fields associated. And that's it, and hide any shapes. So that's all we're going to do here. And I also want to clear out any the shapes that, remember when we had employee name shapes, or if we select a project, we have lots of different names. I want to make sure that each one of these shapes are cleared out. Now, if we take a look inside this, I'll show you how we create these, of course, but keep in mind that each one has the word employee picture in it, each one. And then there's a number assigned to that, 10, 9. So every single one has an employee picture. So if I want to clear out all these pictures only, not all the shapes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop through every shape in this sheet. I'm going to look for only those that contain the words employee picture, and I'm going to delete them. And we do just that. And remember, we've defined this as a shape, employee picture as a shape already. We know it's a shape because we've dimensioned it up here, employee pick as a shape. Once we've done that, we can then loop through every single picture in that sheet. So for each employee picture in skills matrix shape, we're calling out the sheet here and all the shapes in that sheet. If we're going to check each one, if the name of the shape contains the word employee picture using the in-string command, if that's greater than 0, that means that that employee picture found, then we can delete that shape. That's it. All we have to do. That's going to delete all those. Then all we need to do is simply clear out a bunch of cells. I want to clear out everything. Of course, clearing out all of the skills, everything, just basically everything gets cleared out, except of course we have the formula here that doesn't get cleared out. So it's going to go all the way to Z and on down. So all the way through Z. And then I also want to clear out some information here. We've got information here. I got a database row here. This is important. We're going to clear this out. I'll go into detail of what this is, but I do want to clear it out. That's the employee project database row. Basically, it's the database row of this, right? So each row is associated with it, 40, 41, right? And I want to have that row and I want to put that in there. And that's going to come in handy in just a bit. Okay, so that's all we need to do. Is relatively simple. We're keeping all the buttons here. In other projects, I'll change over the buttons, but this one we're keeping it simple. New project, clearing that out. Okay, that's all we need to do. And then if we want to load another project, just selecting a project is going to load it in. All right, so what if I want to make a change and I want to save this project? If I want a description and I want to save this project, I want to click Save Project. Now we're going to use the same macro whether we're having a new project and we try to save it. Of course, it's not going to let us because we do need to add at least a name before that. That save or update project macro is now what we're going to go into right now. And that's the next one here called project save or update. Okay, so we're focusing again on the skills matrix. If J3 is empty, right, I need to make sure that we actually have a specific, I need to know, is there a current ID or not? I need to know, differentiate, is this a new project meaning there's no project ID, or is it an existing project? And B3 would tell us whether it's an existing project or a new project. So that's the first thing we need to determine. And what about J3? Let's focus on this J3. We need a project name before. We can't assign it a project name, right? So if J3 is empty, it's going to, as you saw that message saying, please make sure to assign a project. So J3, if that's empty, we need to make sure that there's a name. So first thing I want to do is let the user know to assign a name. A name will be required before we can save a project. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to turn off application screen updating and we're going to turn the calculations to manual. This is going to make saving a lot faster because we got a lot of data to save and load here, so we want to make sure that we turn those off. The only important thing is when you're using these before the end of the macro, we need to make sure that we're turning those on again, and that's just what we do down here. Okay, so once they're turned off, we can then focus on whether it is a new project, as mentioned before, or an existing project. B4 is going to tell us whether it is a new project, if it's empty, or if it's an existing project. If it is a new project, we're going to do a few things. I'm going to determine the project row, which is going to be the first available row here, in this case 16. And I also want to do is determine the next project ID, and that's located in B5. We're going to use the max formula, as you may have seen before, called maximum of project IDs. Make sure that your project IDs are numerical to use this formula. If there's any text in there, it will not work. So I'm going to take all the existing ones and I'm going to add one. I want to know the maximum number plus 1. If there's any error, meaning maybe we have no data at all, I'm going to default it to 1. Okay. So that's what we're going to do is we're going to take this 15. I'm going to place it directly inside this B3, and I'm also going to take it and place it in the first column here inside the A. And that's just what we do with the next lines of code. So the project row is going to be the first available one. B3 is going to take on the next project ID. Also, A and that project row is going to also take on that project ID. That's it for the new ones. Existing one, existing project, meaning it's already been saved. We're making an update to a previously saved one, just like we did here. We want to update that. All I need to do in this case is simply determine what project row located in B4 and save that into a variable. So we just did that here. Project row is equal to B4. Existing project row. So we have that. Now what I want to do is I want to determine the project ID is going to be located for either whether it's a new or an existing one. I want to get that project ID and I want to put it into a variable. So once we have that, we're going to use now data mapping. If you haven't seen this before, then basically what we're going to do is we're going to map the project name to J3. Notice that column B is all of our project names. Well, that gets mapped here to J3. Project type here, P3. So I've mapped those out inside here. So P3. So each field is mapped out. So if I want to save the information from this table, from these fields to this, we already know what row. We've already determined row. All I need to do is look in J3 and place it here. Look in P3 and place it here. So we've done just that. And we're going to loop from column 2 all the way to column. What column is this? Well, this is equals column. This is column 9. So we know that we're going to loop from 2 to 9. And that's just what we do here, from 2 to 9. And I'm going to basically take whatever is inside this range here, project cells, row 1 in the column, whatever is that range can be J3, P3, W3, whatever it is, inside the skills matrix, whatever's inside this field, and place it directly in that project row and in that project column on the project. And that's going to save all of our data in just 3 lines of code. Great. So now that we've updated that way, that's going to save all the project. We're done with this. Now what we also need to do is I need to save the employees and I need to save the skills. The skills get saved in this and the employees get saved in this. So we need to do that as well. So first of all, I want to update the assigned skills. So to do that, like let's say we decide we want to add a skill. This is project ID number 7. We've got a single skill on this. So if we look inside our project skills and we look for project ID 7, we see that it's got a single one, flooring, right? But I want to add more onto that. I want to add 2 more onto that. So how do we do that? Well, all I need to do is just click masonry or click anything, add a skill, click another one. It won't let us add the same one twice, which is what we want. And then we add another one, let's say welding, and we click add a skill. So now I've got 2 more skills that I need to add. If I save that project now, I need to determine the last one. And then if we take a look into project skills, we see now that we have masonry and welding inside the database. So when I load this project up, I know to load these 2, and I need to load this one also here, the original one located here, flooring. So I want to save these 2 ones, but I need to determine has it been saved before or not, right? So what I need to do is I need to track the database. What row is this on? If we look down here, we see this one, assigned project skill database row, 37, 46, and 47. What do those numbers correspond? Inside the project skills, take a look at this, 37, row 37, row 46, and row 47. So they're saved here. So we know, here's how we know. If I decide to add a 4th skill to this project, just like this here, then I know if I look down here and I see before saving it, right? Oh, it's been saved. It gets saved automatically. I forgot. Once I add it, it gets saved automatically. That's better. Now it's 48. So as soon as we add it, it gets saved. So that database row is going to be saved down there. So we do this. 4 skill column equals 7 to 26. 7 to 26. Starting out in column 7. This is column 7. All the way to 26. Which is Z, right? I want to look and see what we have. So how are we going to do that? If cells, row 6, skill column, if it's empty, then exit 4, meaning basically it's going to loop through all these. As soon as it's empty, it's going to exit out. So I want to updating all of those. So if cells 100 skill column equals empty, then it's a new skill, although almost all right, right? So how do we do that? So if, here's row 100, If it's empty, then it's a new skill, right? Brand new skill. This is going to be, if it's existing, it's not. So if this has already been assigned a database, it's an existing skill. But if it's something I just added, this one's going to be empty. So we're looking in row 100 and the skill column and determining is it new or is it not. So that's how we do. If 100 equals new, then we need to do something. All of this is if it's new, or if it's an existing, we're doing just one thing. So what are we doing if it's new? Well, what I want to do if it's a brand new skill, I want to add some information in. I want to add a project ID. I want to add in the database. I want to add the column, and I want to add the database row. So we're going to do those things here. So the skill database row is going to be equal to the first available one. We need to find the first available one, right? What's the first available one? In this case, it's 49, right? So we need to get that row. So after we determine that row, what I want to do is I want to determine the database row and place that directly in there. So we know the database row, and I'm going to take that database row and I'm going to place it directly in row 100 in the column. That's going to be place database row. Great. So now what I want to do is I want to do those three things inside the table. Those three things are only for new skills. A is going to take on the project ID. Now you see why we converted it to a variable, so it's easy to use. So column A is going to take on, I need to put that project ID in the first column here. I need to put the skill column in column E, although we may not be using this in this training, but future trainings, and the database row, still having it there is very helpful, and the database row. So I want to put all that directly into here. So E is going to take on whatever skill column. F is going to take on the row. We're using a formula. That way, if we delete a row, it will remain consistent and will show the actual row. That is the database. So that's all we need to do for new skills. What if it's an existing? All I need to do in this case is extract the database row from wherever it's located in row 100 and the skill column. We're taking the existing skill and we're just putting that into a variable. So now I have the skill database row, whether it is existing or whether it is new, I'm going to have it in a variable. Then what we can do is add the rest of the information, all three lines, both the skill, the minimum level, and the minimum staff. I'm going to put that in the next three columns, B, C, and D. You can see B, C, and D. We're going to take that information, and that information is going to come from row 6, row 7, and row 8. So here in row 6, we've got the skill level here, we've got the minimum skill level, and the minimum staff. So if I add information to this here, it is automatically going to be saved because it already has the database row. So if we look in this here, and I put 5s in everything, not 55, 5 here, and then 5 here. So then we can then update it. As soon as we save it, it's going to save those values inside those project skills. So if we scroll down, we see the 5 has been already added in, both in 46, 47, and also in 36. So updating it, we know the database row. So we've just updated the information using these lines of code. Great, so that covers the skills, but what about the employees? And now that we've saved the skills, we also need to save the employees. We need to know which employees were saved. And that's going to be saved inside here. So I need to know, of course, the project ID, the employee name, the rate, and the position. Now the rate and the position, that could change. So I really don't want to save it. But what I'd like to do is take a formula and basically put it directly from. Now we know each employee inside the employee table, we have a rate. We have their position here. So if it changes here, what I want us to do is I want it to reflect it inside here. That way, the reason we want to put it here, it's much easier when I load that employee name and I bring those results based on a project ID. I can also bring the rate and the rate over, or of course the position, either one. So what I'd like to do is take a formula, an index formula based on a match, based on employee name, and I only wanted to have it for those employees. I only want that formula here when we add an employee. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to use a formula. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a formula up here based on whatever that employee name is. If that formula is up here, every time I add a name to this table, I can then bring down this formula. That formula is basically, we're going to index the employee rate, which is a named range based on the employee table, and we're going to match it based on the employee name. I also have the same thing for the employee position, basically an index employee position. So if we take a look inside the formulas, name manager, we see that we have employee rate here. This is basically a dynamic named range based on the employee hourly rate. We're doing the same thing for the position. then all I need to do is find the row based on a match based on this employee name here. And it is that match that we are going to run, that index match formula based on the project employee. So it's indexing the employee position based on a match of that employee name. So if I bring that formula in, that VBA will take that, because I don't want to put that formula for every single row if there's no data. I only want VBA to copy that formula when we add it. So we're going to add that project ID. We're going to add the name. We're going to bring down the formulas, and we're going to add in that row that it is located on. That's the database row using a formula, using that row formula. That's all we need to do for employees. And how do we know if it is a new? How do we know if it's been added or not? Well, we can look all the way to here. If it does not contain a row, this employee database row is based on the row inside this table that I'm showing inside the employee, based on this. So if we look in row 55 here, we see Craig Nelson on project 7. If we take a look inside the skill matrix, we see that Craig Nelson here is based on project number 7. So we know that's saved. That's how we can know. So let's go ahead that. We're going to update the assigned employees. But the first thing what I want to do is I need to know the last employee row. We need to loop through all these employees. So I need to know the last row based on column E. So we can use a formula for that, and that's going to be the last employee row based on E99 and XLab. This is going to give us the last employee row, row. Once I have that, I'm going to run a loop. So we're going to use the employee row is going to be 9, our first row, to the last employee row. And then I want to look into column AM and see if it's been added. If this is a blank column AM, we can bring these over. We don't need so much space in between the two of them, right? If we're looking in column AM, if it's empty, we know it has not been currently added to the database. So we then just add a new. So same like we did. So if it's empty, that is a new project employee. We want to get that database row based on the first available row here. What I want to do then is add the inside AM, right? We need to add that row. Once we've determined what row we're going to place it in, we're going to place that database row right here in column AM. I'm also going to take that project ID and I'm going to place it in the first column. Project ID, again, that named range is helping us. I'm going to place it inside E. I'm going to set the database row here. And I also want to bring over those formulas. Remember, those formulas in C1 through D1, I'm going to paste them inside whatever database rows, paste in those formulas. That is called the rate and post formulas. I got it here, rate and position. Let's put that position, not position. Position, cleared it. Okay, so position formulas. I'm going to copy them over and bring it. That's what's going to help. Okay, great. So we only need to do this for employees that have been added to a project, new. If they're existing, all we need to do is simply extract that database row located in column AM in the employee row. Then we have it there. Okay, great. So all this is for whether we're new or existing. The rest is automatically for both new and existing. We're going to take that employee name, only one employee name. We're going to put it in column B. That employee name is located in E and the employee row. It's going to bring over that employee name to our project employees here in column B. That's it. That's all we need to do. Continuing on with the code. That's it. Now I want to check if B2 value does not equal empty, meaning we have a selected row. If B2 does not equal empty, meaning what I want to do is select it, and that's going to automatically reload that project once we add it. So if I decide to save it, what I want to do is reload it based on this. So all we need to do, if I want to add an employee or delete an employee, just save the project, and it's going to automatically load up back into project 7. It happens very, very quickly. So we just basically want to update the project name. Now, also, what if I decide to update this to a project name? I also want to make sure that this project name gets updated here. So let's say we change this to, let's say, kitchen update, right? And I want to save the project. I don't want this to show project 7 anymore. I want it to show kitchen update. So clicking save project, we now see that D7 is equal to that updated project. So we're going to update that name, but I only want to update it if I know that we have a selected project row in B2, just to make sure. So If B2 does not equal empty, then D and B2 value, the project row, D in the project row, equals whatever the project name. This is going to update that project name automatically. And that's all we have to do, and then turn screen updating. That's it. Okay, so now we know how to do new project. We know how to do save or update the project, making sure we have a project name. But how do we load the project? Remember what I told you, when we click here, what we're going to do is we're going to add that project row, the selected row. We're going to add the project ID here using that find command. We went over that inside the selection change here. Just to review, we went over that down here in the selection change when we're adding it. We found the project, and the last thing we're going to do is run that project load. So that is the macro that we're going to go over right now that we haven't gone over, called project load. And the first thing what I want to do is I want to clear out all the associated cells, right? If we're loading a project, we need to clear out all the data located here. It means all the employees, all the skills, all the skill data, and all the information above. We need to make sure that that gets cleared out. So we can do that with just this line of code. Then I also want to clear out the employee pictures using the same line of code that we did before when we click add new project, using this, going through every single shape in the sheet, any shape that contains employee picture, and deleting it. Once we have that, what I want to make sure is that in order to load a project, the most important thing is we need to have a project row and a project ID. So if the project ID is missing or incorrect, this project row is going to be empty if there's any error. So we need to check to make sure that B4 is not empty. If it's not empty, we can move on, but if it is empty, we need to let the user know to select a correct project. So if B4 equals empty, message box, please select a correct project to load, and then exit the sub. There's nothing we can do unless we have B4 as a value. First thing we're going to do again after that is turn off calculation, screen updating, add both of those to make sure that this thing runs a lot faster because there's a lot of data that needs to come in. I'm going to put that project row, put that into a variable from B4, and then I guess we're going to do that reverse data mapping. This time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to determine that project row, and then what I'm going to do is once that project row is found, I'm going to say, okay, inside whatever is in that project row in column B, we're going to say put it in J3. Whatever's inside the column 2, put it in P3. So it's reverse data mapping. We're taking whatever's this, and we're going to use row 1 data to do just that. Those ranges inside row 1. So the range is going to be the project row 1 in the column. So this is where we're going to find the range here, and we're going to take the range of the skills, this sheet here, this particular sheet here, we're going to bring that in directly from the database. It's going to come from the projects, from the project row, and from the project column. This way we can add all of that information in with just 3 lines of code. Okay, great. So that's going to basically bring all of this information in here, but we still haven't added our employees. We still haven't added our skills yet. So we need to add that. And of course, we also haven't added our data in here. This is going to come from the employees. So in this case, when we're loading up, I need to load up all the employees, all the skills, and I need to extract all of the data that's associated, which is the employee skill levels, and it's going to come directly from here. So we need that. We're going to be basing loading information from the employees, information from the project employees, information from the project skills, and we're going to bring all that into our dynamic skills matrix. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing is the project skills. And I'm going to run an advanced filter, right? So what I want to do inside our project skills is I want to determine exactly the last row, and I want to bring all of only the results from project 7. So if I link this in the criteria to whatever's in the skills matrix B3, we have our criteria already. Then all I need is determine the last row, run an advanced filter so that only those results for project 7 come in. I can then bring these results and loop through these results and bring them in here. And that's just what I do right here. So first the last row, if it's less than 3, go to no skills. I'm going to run that advanced filter from A3. Notice we're on column 3 is the headers. The header names must be exact as they are inside the criteria and the results. Once we have that, our criteria here is in J2 through J3. We're going to copy it through L2 through P2. Going to determine the last row of our results here using column L. It's going to last row. In this case, our last row is 6. So assuming it's less than 3, then go to no skills. It's going to skip all this and go right to here. But if we have data, we are going to set our initial skill column as 7. Right? This is where we're not using this. We could use this, but we're not using this because what I want to do, and I'll show you why that's important, is that basically if I delete, let's say if I delete this here, then I only want 3 to show up. So that's why we're not using the column. So all I need to do is start out at column 7 and then just basically go in order, 7, 8, 9, 10. So whatever they're here, it allows us to delete one very easily. So I want to start out at 7 and then just increment the column 8, 9, 10. So that's all we're going to do. So basically, I'm going to loop through these skills starting at 7, 8, and 9. So we need to set that initial column. And we set that initial column right here, skills. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop from the result row from 3 to the last result row. Starting in 3, going to the last result row. We're going to loop through that. I'm going to adding this, and adding this, and adding all this information. And we do that through here. The skills matrix, row 6. Row 6, of course, is our skill name. Row 7 is our minimum level. And row 8 is our minimum staff. So we just add all that in, bringing this information into our specific rows. Row 6 taking on our skill level, row 7 taking on our minimum level, and row 8 containing our minimum employees, staff at the skill level. So we're just bringing that data in each individual one. And so after that, what I want to do is I also want to place that database row in row 100, right? So I want that row because I need to know it's been saved. So inside row 100, I also want to place that database row, 36, 47, 46, and 47. That database row is going to come directly from here inside our project skills here, 36, 37, 46, and 47. So that's going to come from column P. So that's just what we do here. P is going to go inside directly to row 100 in the skill column. And each time we're going to increment that. Remember, we're starting it off in column 7, so we've got to increment that column going from 8 to 9. So incrementing that column. So that's how we bring in all the data. And then what I want to do is I want to make sure we calculate that. That's very important to calculate that. Okay, because we have formulas in here. Those formulas are going to be very important. So once we have that, now we want to load in the project employees. We're going to do something very similar for the employees. The employees, we're going to also run an advanced filter, and we have a criteria also based on B3, also in J, and I want those results to come through L through M and N in this column. So I want the employee name, the employee rate, and I want the database row. But what if it's not? What if, remember, we have a toggle here. What if we want to show the staff position, right? What if I don't want to get the rate? So how do we dynamically change that? Right, based on the selector here. Remember, this particular one, if we take a look inside this again format, this is based on B6. So B6 is going to roll. B6 is going to change from 1 to 2 based on that. So if I know that B6 is 2 means position, I can change the header on that criteria inside the project employees. So that's the results here. Criteria is only going to be project 7. The results, I want to show either employee position or either our rate. So how do we do that? If the skills matrix B6 equals 1, then what I want to show is project employees C3, otherwise show D3. What does that mean? So look inside here, project employees. I want to show either C3, employee rate, or D3. So we're going to show those results are going to be based on whatever's. So look, then now if we escape out of there, we see it's employee position. As soon as I change that to hourly rate, it's going to run a macro. That macro is going to load that entire project again, but this time it's based on hourly rate. So if we look back inside the project employees, we see now it's employee rate. So this header is dynamic based on whatever the user's selection. So the results are also going to be dynamic based on whatever header is used. Now keep in mind that we must use the same header. Either basically we're using this header, employee rate, or employee position. That is why it was so important to bring in this information directly using a formula from our employees here, rate and position here, into this, so we automatically have the most accurate data here. Then all we need to do is bring the information here. So this is called a dynamic results header based on an option. It's very simple, and then that way our data can show. Then it's easy. Then all I need to do is bring the same columns over regardless, because it's also going to change. Now, if we take a look inside the skills matrix, also inside this, we have very, very similar. If B6 equals 2, we're going to put in position, otherwise hourly rate. So our header here changes also based on what's selected. So simply change that over. It's going to, and again, all I need to do is then assign the macro to this. So that means every time a user clicks, we're just going to assign that macro project load to this. That way, when you click it, it loads the project. So we have a dynamic column here based on just a few different formulas. So that way, our advanced filter, when we run our advanced filter, it's going to automatically show either position or rate. So inside that, we don't need to change anything inside the code. Our criteria is J2 through J3, which is that project ID, and our results L2 through N2. Again, the last results row is going to be based on column L. Then if it's 3, we're going to go to no employees, which is going to skip all that and go right to here. Assuming we do have employees, all I need to do again is just bring over the employees, and that's going to be basically coming from L through M, right? I want those results, employee name, employee position. I want that, and I want to bring that directly into right here, E through F, bringing that over inside E through F and the last results row. Our results row start on row 9 here, but in here they start on row 3, so the difference is 6, so I need to compensate for that by adding 6 here. And that's it. I also want to list the database rows. Those employee database rows, I have to come over, so I'm going to bring those over directly inside here, inside AM, so they're going to come inside AM, just as we said here. Okay, so now that it's going to come directly from N, it's going to come directly from here. And just bringing this database row and bringing them directly inside here. That's all we're going to be doing. Relatively simple on that part. Okay, great. So now what we want to do is we have to add the employee pictures. We've added the employees here, but I haven't added any pictures. And the best way to do this is to use a sample. If we take a look at this one here, this is a sample shape. It's called employee sample picture. Again, all this is just a circle, basically like that, and I put an employee picture inside here. If I were to do it manually, I'd click the format picture. Sorry, it's off the screen. And now what we're doing is we're filling it with a picture, and we're just basing it on a file. So we click the picture file, and we would do that, put in a picture as a background, filling it with a picture. But we can also do that with VBA. And since we have a folder here full of pictures, we've already mapped this folder using the admin screen. We already have accurate picture file names located inside our employee here. So if we have all that, it's very easy to add a picture with just a little bit of code. So we can do that here. First thing what we want to do is we want to determine the last employee row is equal to last row. I want to set that last employee row, right? We need to loop through all these employees. So I need the last row. In this case, it's 17. So we've got that down. Now what I want to do is I want to determine the picture folder. Remember, it's in our admin screen, and I'm going to add a backslash to that. That is going to give us a picture folder and putting it into a string. Next up, what we're going to do is we're going to set a loop, right? I need to loop through all these employees, starting at 9, going to the last row. Continue on. So as we move through 9, I want to make sure that we actually have a database row. So if we take a look in here, I want to make sure that we have our employee database row. If I'm going to pull the pictures, this file directly from the employee, I need to know what row those employees are on, right? Is it row 3 or 4? I need to extract it from G, but the first thing I need to do is know what row. So we can do that with a formula inside the skills. So here we've got a formula. Basically, we're running a match based on employee name, whatever's in E9 and an employee name. And we're going to add 2 because I want to look for that row. Notice the employees start on row 3. So the first employee is on row 3. That's why I'm adding 2 if the first employee is found. And I'm using that formula. I'm going to bring that formula down all the way down here and wrapping it in if error, because if there's no employee, an error would be found. So we just want to wrap that. If there's an error, it would show empty. So that's going to set us as an employee database. I need to know that employee database. So as long as there's a row here, then I can extract that picture file name directly from our employees located in column G here. So we want to make sure if range AN in the employee row equals empty, that means there's no database row. So we can go all the way and we skip to the next employee. Assuming that we do have a database row, then what I want to do is I want to check to see, make sure that there's actually a picture in column G of the employee's database sheet. That is where the picture file will be located. As long as that's not empty, we can move on. We're going to set the picture file. The file is going to be G in that employee, right? That's the picture file name. We're going to combine that picture file name along with the picture folder for a full file path. And that is the picture file path. We'll write that here in the full picture file path. once we have that, I want to check to make sure it is accurate because I don't want to create errors. So the best way to do that is use the directory. So we're going to use the directory of the picture path, VB directory. If it equals empty, then also we're going to skip to go to next employee, which is going to drop down here. Okay, assuming that it's not empty, that means we do have an accurate file path. We can then add that in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the shapes employee sample picture. That is this shape right here, this small shape. I want to duplicate that employee sample picture. Now keep in mind the name of this called employee sample picture. It is very different than the name of this employee picture. Notice it's spelled out. Because remember, when we're clearing or adding new, we need to delete all these pictures. I want to make sure that I don't delete my sample. So I'm going to make sure not to call it the full name, employee EMP sample, so it won't be deleted. It is this one that we are going to duplicate. Once it's duplicated, I'm going to assign it a unique name. And I want to give it that name, the employee picture and the employee row. Now the employee row is not too important, but it is unique and that's good enough. I want to make sure that it is unique and it has to contain the words employee picture because when we first start with this macro here, we want to make sure that we're clearing out any existing pictures by removing any of those pictures that contain that text. And so that's just what we do down here on employee row. Then we can work with it. Once we've created it, we're going to work with it. So with that particular newly created shape, I'm going to position that based on column E and the left +2. So we're focused on column E and slightly off, not directly on that border, but a little bit to the right, +2 pixels is going to do that for us. And I also want to give it the top position here inside the top skills matrix, E and the employee row in top position. Once I have that, all I need to do is take that picture, that accurate picture, and fill that shape with that picture. So dot fill user picture, adding that picture of the picture path inside that, it's going to add that picture in the shape. That's all we need to do. And we just loop through all the employees and it's going to add a picture for every single one. All right, great. Now that we've got all the employee pictures, we also want to load those skills. So far we've added in all of our project information. We've added in our skills, we've added in our employees, and we've added in our pictures, but we haven't added in the employee levels here. I need to know what skill levels for each of the employee based on the skill. So how are we going to do that? Well, the first thing what I want to do is start a loop. The last skill column, I need to know the last skill column. What is the last skill column? And to get that, we're going to do here, AB6, we're going to get the last skill column. In this case here, it's lighting here, this column here, right? It is column 9, but I want to get that last column. So to do that, we're going to get AB6 and XL to the left. That is going to get us the last column from AB6 all the way to the left so that we can loop starting with 7 and moving on. So we can go from 7 to whatever. So in this case, the last one's 9. So I want to start that loop for the skill column equals 7 to the last skill column. And I also want to know the employee rows for the employee row 9. So not only do I need to loop through this, I need to loop through every single employee and then every single column. So we've got in a loop embedded another loop. First one, employees, 9 to the last one, and then column share. So I'm going to extract the information. So how do we do that? For the skill column, employee, okay, so first we're starting employee, then we're the skill column, and then what I want to do is I want to check AN again. Remember, I want to make sure I know that employee database row. That's got to be a number. Got to have that employee row because those skills are located here. So if I want to know the appliances skill 9 or the cabinetry skill 6, I need to know, first of all, I want to make sure that we have the correct employee database row. In this case, it's 3. And I also want to have the column. I need to get that column, appliances or whatever. So how do I do? I need to then find what column. We know what row, because the row, of course, is going to be located here, 5, 6, or 7. And then I need the column. So how are we going to extract the column? Well, first of all, you want to make sure that that column is located right here. Here, we put it in 101. How did we do that? So 101 is going to take care of that column. What is that column? What I'm going to do is I'm going to run a match. We have a named range called skills. And that named range is based on there. Let's go into that named range just so we can take a quick look at that. It's called skills, and that named range is located here in the admin. So that is named. So if I know skills here is all our named range, and I know our first one starts on 4, but I need to look inside the employees, right? Or the first one that's found. If the first one is found, where is it going to be found here? Equals column. So if the first one is found, that's going to be found on column 8, right? So if the first one is found, appliances, how do I get to column 8? Well, I simply add 7 to get to 8 because I want to know that column. So that's just what we did inside the formulas inside our skill matrix here. So, excuse me, 7, because we need to add one more in this one. 7 plus 1. If the first one is found and we need to get to column number 8, then we need to add 7. That makes more sense. Okay, so that's just what we do here. So I'm going to match it. If the first one is found, I need to get to column 8. So this would be 1. This will return 1 if the first one is found. And I want to get to the employee column. I'm going to add 7. Otherwise, I'm just going to show something other than blank. Otherwise, we're going to show blank. This is going to let us know. Okay, because I don't want it to show 0 here. I just want to show some text. And then what I can do is I can check to see if it's a number. If this is a number, I know we have a correct column. That column 15 is going to be the same. Let's take a look inside here, skill matrix here. Take a look at this. We're looking for column flooring, right? And I want to know what column it is. So if we do equals column here, we show all the columns here in this case 8, and I'm looking for column 15. We know here flooring is column 15. I want to extract that 15. I know the row now in the employee row. I know the column, so I can extract this number. For example, if it's Peter Parker, I know that 10 is going to be extracted. I know how to get that Peter Parker. I know I want to get that 10 right here. I've got to know the row. That row, of course, is coming directly from AN here, row 5. Now I know the column, right? The column here is all the way down here, and one of them is column 15. So when I know the row and I know the column, I can extract the exact data that I want. And so that's all we're doing inside here. So the employee database row is going to be based on AN. The employee database column is going to be based on row 101 and the skill column. Now that I have both the row and the column, I can simply bring in the data. So the cells, the employee row, and the skill column, right? The skill column, we're looping from 7 to 9. The employee rows from 9 down. So that is simply going to be equal to whatever's on the employees, the employee database row, the employee database column, bringing in that skill level over. And that's all we have to do, looping through each skill and then looping through each employee, each skills. And it happens very, very fast when we actually turn off screen updating. And you can see how if we just load a large project, or let's go back to the big project, you see it's very, very fast here. Even there, it's really fast. So it helps us out even if we have a lot of data. So that's all we have to do. And then what I want to do is I want to set this default to team name, right? Default team name, because I want to make sure that we can tell the user to add a team name here. Notice that when we add here, if we put anything else in, it is no longer italicized and no longer that gray. And that is done through conditional formatting. There's a rule here as well, additional rule. Basically, if it's F5, it's equal to team name, then in that case, I want to make it italicized and I want to give it a gray color. That's how. And basically that way the user can then save all of these employees as Team Fred if they want to do that. But as soon as we load the project in here, that is automatically going to go back to team name. We're setting that default back to team name using here, set the default. And also I want to make sure if the active sheet is code name, if we're currently on this sheet, then I just want to, when I load it, I want to make sure we select a cell. Perhaps let's say J3, that's the project name. So that line of code is just going to simply select J3. And that's it, turning on screen calculation to automatic and screen uploading to true. Very, very easily. All right, next up we have delete. That's the last macro in this particular module. And then all we want to do is just let the user know, are you sure you want to delete it? Yes or no, and delete the project. If they say no, we're going to exit out of the sub. We're going to determine, we want to make sure that B4 contains it. If we're going to be deleting this, we need to make sure that B4 contains a project row. If it doesn't, let's say we new project and the user clicks delete, all we're going to do is just say, you sure want to delete? And then we'd say yes, and then it's just going to clear. Nothing's going to happen. So we want to make sure that B4 contains a value, right? So to do that, all we need to do is just to make sure that we got the project row. That's very important if we're going to be deleting it from the project. Okay, so the project row is skill matrix. B4 equals the project row. And then we're just going to basically, based on the project, delete that entire row. Now, if I was building this application for distribution, I would also want to remove all the skills associated with that project and all the employees associated with that particular project using, again, criteria and then deleting them. But we're not doing it in this one because we're covering enough. That covers it. At least it's going to clear it out. Then what I want to do is once it's been deleted, I'm going to run the macro that's going to load that project list and then add new project. So it's going to automatically delete it. So simply if I want to delete project 14 and I click delete project and yes, I want to do it, it's going to delete it. It's no longer going to be in this list. here. So that's delete. Okay, great. So we've covered all the project macros, and now we've got a few macros left on our skill matrix macros. So let's take a look at some of the macros. We're going to get into some of the macros on this one. Not too many. So let's go over that before we let you go. All right, so I got a few, of course, variables on this. We're going to go through these variables as we come across them. For example, skill level is going to be a long variable. It's going to be the active cell value. I've got a macro that's going to go up and down. Remember, when I select a specific skill, I want to be able to increase this up here like this, or increment up to the maximum here. Can't go beyond 10. And it can't go below 1. So if I go, we have it down, and we can't go below 1. How do we know that? Well, I'm going to use these levels here. Now we've got a named range called, in the formula called levels, I believe. Let's take a look at it, called levels. Here it is. And it's a dynamic named range based on those levels. So that way you can create multiple levels, or you can have 1 through 5 or 1 through 20 or whatever you want here. And so what I want to do is I want to know the maximum of this, in this case 10. I want to know the minimum, in this case 1. So I'm going to use that, and that way if the number falls below 1, we can let them know. So the first thing what I want to do is, and we're increasing it up, I'm going to set the level range to the admin levels, right? We're setting a range, right? We've defined this as a range, level range as a range. And of course, if there's on error, if it's nothing, then please be sure to set the level. We want to make sure we have a named range called levels. That's very important in there. So I want to make sure that we have that. If it's not there, then we need to let the user know to please be sure to set the levels. Maybe it's empty or something like that. So what's the maximum skill? Now the maximum skill, this is a long variable. We're going to use the max formula, but this time we can use application worksheet function max level range. Okay, so it's going to give us the max. Now the skill level here is equal to value, whatever the value the user has selected. So in this case, the skill level in this case is 2, right? This is 1 and this is 2. So we want to know that value. We've put that into a variable right here, and it's going to be a long variable. So if we're using max, remember we're going up, this is the one that's going to increase it. If here the skill level is greater than or equal to the max skill level, then let the user know they cannot go beyond that. Skill levels cannot go beyond, and then whatever the max skill level. That way we get something dynamic, so that when let's say I've clicked on this here, we go up 1 to 10, we go one more, it says skill levels cannot go beyond 10. So that number is dynamic based on a variable. If I were to change it to 11, if I add one more in here, we can now go beyond that. So now simply here, we can go increment at 1. So now we can go on. So now it says skill levels cannot go beyond 11. So very, very handy, very, very helpful. So it's completely dynamic based on the values you enter into that. And that's why we have it there. So that's why it's called the dynamic skill matrix. So we also, assuming that it is not, then what I want to do, if it's beyond, I just want to set the active cell value to the maximum skill. And then what I want to say is active cell value, assuming that it is not, let's see, let's exit out of this one, exit sub. Right, we've set it up. We don't need to increment it anymore. We can exit out of them. We set it to the maximum. Now, what if it's not? What if it is less than the max skill? Then I want to increment the active cell value. It's going to be the active cell value plus 1. We're incrementing at 1, right? If it's not up to the max, we can simply increase it until it gets up to the max. So that's very, very easy. Okay. So it's going to be exactly the same for the down, exactly the same, except this time what we're going to do is we want the minimum skill. And that minimum skill is going to be the application worksheet function minimum based on the level range. So I want to know the minimum number based on that range, in this case 1. Okay, if the skill level is less than or equal, then they can't go below the minimum skill. Active cell value, and then of course we're going to exit the sub. So we have that, and now all we do, assuming that it is not at the minimum level, we can just reduce it by 1. Okay, good. That's great. So that we covered that. But what about, we also have to remember, now we've got some more macros. We have a macro that we're going to come up next called adding the skill. Now, if it goes beyond that, we can't add a skill beyond that, or a maximum of 20 skills can be added, right? I don't want to go beyond that. But for projects that have enough, we need to check. If it's not the maximum, I want to make sure that they can add it. Of course, if it already exists, they cannot add it. So for example, if I try to add this, it's going to say lighting has already been added. But if I added another one, we can't add it here. So it's going to let us add it. So how do we do that? We do that through a macro. And that macro is tied to this button right here called add skill. So if I sign the macro, we see that's called project add skill. That is the macro that we're going to cover right now called project add skill. So inside this macro, what I want to know is I want to know the last skill column. How many skills do we have? So we're going to set the skill column is going to be the first available skill column. So this is 7, 8, 9, 10. This is going to be 11, right? The first column is going to be available. It's going to be 11. In this case, what I want to do is I want to put that into a variable. So the skill column is going to be range A6 and left. This is going to be the last column with a value. And then what I want to do is add one onto that. So that would be the first available column to the right, even though it says to the left. We're moving to the left of this range, right? To the left of that range. That's going to get us the first available column to the right. Then if the skill column is less than a 7, then just set it to 7. We want to set that minimum skill column to be 11, right? So I want to make sure that if we have a project with no skills at all and we add one, we need to make sure we're adding it to column 7. All right, assuming that we do have the minimum, then what I want to do is if the skill column is greater than 26, then we need to let the user know that the maximum skills have already been added. So a maximum of 20 skills can be added. Then exit the sub. Nothing we can do, we're setting the maximum. Also, what I want to make sure is Z5 is empty. Make sure to select a skill. We can't select if this is empty, Z5 is empty, there's nothing we can do. So we want to let the user know to make sure that they select something inside Z5. Of course, this is a data validation based on the skills. That named range that we have here is just a data validation here based on skills. Relatively simple. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to check to see if that skill exists. If I try to add it again, it's not going to let us. I don't want to add the same skill. So what I need to do is check that range, and I'm going to look for a find. If it's been found, then let the user know. So we're going to use the find command. So setting the found skill, this is a range based on all of the contents between G6 and Z6. What we're going to use, we're going to use the find. I'm going to find whatever's in Z5, and I'm going to look in Excel values and Excel whole. If it's been found, then it's this. If not found is nothing. These cancel each other out, meaning it's double negative. So that means it has been found. If it has been found, that skill already exists. Then what we want to do is let the user know this skill has already been added to the project. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to select it, let the user know which one to select. So it's going to kind of like, let's say we have a lot, let's say I add some more skills here. And so I want to let the user know exactly, in case there's a lot, it's hard to find, right? So now we've added it. So let's say I want to find welding. I'm going to try to add welding. It's going to let me know. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select welding. So that kind of pinpoints exactly, let the user know, yes, it's been added, and select it so that it highlights the one that's already the duplicate. And we do that through here. Row 6, found the skill range. So whatever column it's been found on, select it. Once we select it, that macro is going to trigger, and it's going to automatically add that shape and the conditional formatting, all that. Okay, great. So that's it. So once it's been, we're exiting out, right? There's nothing we can do if it's already been added. Assuming that it hasn't been added yet, all we need to do is add it. So inside the cells, the skill column, the value is going to equal whatever's in Z5. This is going to add a skill. Once it's been added, as I mentioned to you before, I want to save it right away and load it right away, because that way it's going to load all the information. So I'm going to run the macro to save it, and then it's going to load it. And what that's going to do is automatically, as I add it inside there, assuming that we have employees here, let's add a skill. Here I've got employees. So let's add a skill. Let's add wedding to this. So what I want to do is loading that, saving and loading. It's going to, remember when we load it, it's automatically going to add the levels based on the employees. So that way the macro, as soon as we save it, we add it, it's going to bring in that data, and that's what I want, bringing in that data. Okay, that's it. That's all we have to do. But what if I want to delete a skill? When I select something, remember we show how to display this, but what if I want to delete it? Well, that's going to be a macro that we have here. And how do we do that? Well, the first thing is we want to make sure that we've selected a column. That column that we've selected is going to be stored directly inside B7. So I want to make sure that B7 contains a value. So if I select it, it's going to automatically. So that's the first thing we have to make sure. With the skills matrix, if B7 is empty, that means we have no selected column, right? We can exit the sub out. If we do, we're going to put that into a variable called skill column. Then what I want to do is I want to clear the contents of row 6, which is the name, and clearing the contents. And also what I want to know is, has it been saved yet already? Most likely it has, because as soon as we add it. So what I want to do is find that database row here, and I want to make sure to clear the contents out here. So I want to make sure here, located in 100, H100 in this case, I want to clear it out if this particular skills matrix row 100, the skill columns, if it does not equal empty, that's already been deleted. I want to delete that database row. So we're going to put that into a variable called the skills database row, right? If I've just added it and I need to add delete 52, if I go into the project skills, I want to delete 52. So the best way to do that here is to get that row, put it into a variable so that I can delete that. So if I do this, I want to know that 52. I need to know what row to delete. So as soon as I click here and click delete, and then we go into the project skills, we see that 52 has now been deleted. So we need that 52, and I need to put that inside a variable. Then all we need to do is just delete it. This is what we just did. Project skills, range, the database row, colon, and the skill data delete. So this is going to delete skills database row. Delete skills database row. Okay, so we have that. And then what I want to do is I also want to make sure we're clearing the database from here. Right? I want to also clear whatever values are in here inside row 100 and the column. We're clearing the contents out. We're clearing that database row. That's all we need to do. Then what I want to do is I want to hide that button, right? I don't need, once we've deleted it, I want to make sure that this shape here called delete skills button is hidden. So we're not delete it, we're going to hide it using MSO false. So we're going to hide that. And I also want to clear B7. That selected column should be cleared out. B7 is collected. So if I have a large one, I want to delete that. I want to make sure that B7 gets cleared out. So we no longer have that selected column. And that's all we do. Then of course we just also save the project and load the project again. That's going to refresh all the data. All right, great. So what about getting some unique teams, right? If I add a team, remember we added a team before. Let's go ahead and click here. Here, right? Notice we added a team here. So I want to make sure that we have a macro that's going to actually get those unique teams. If I decide to rename this or create a new team, I want to get some unique teams. If I have a, let's say I have a, okay, here we go. We've got a few employees on this one. I want to create a new team. I want to automatically have a macro that's going to give that name. Let's just say we call this framing team, okay? And I want to give it, and I want to create a macro called save as a team. I need to automatically update this named range with the word framing, right? I need to make sure that that's updated here. So how do we do that? We need a macro that's going to do that. Now, if we take a look inside the employees, we have a bunch of teams here. So what I want to do is I want to get a unique list of teams, and I want to place that unique list directly here. And I want to create a named range based on the results of that called unique teams. So if I look in formulas and name manager and look in teams, we see that we have a dynamic named range based on the results of that filter. That's going to be without a criteria. So we have that. So that's all we need to do is create a macro that's going to automatically look through all the employees, get the list of unique teams, and place it directly inside column AE. So that's what we're going to do here. So with the employees, we're focusing on that. The last row is going to be A. We're going to run, if it's last row, let exit sub if there's no data. I want to clear any criteria on this sheet. This is very important because when we create other types of, like let's say we have a criteria framing, right? If I do that, this is a criteria here. It's going to get in the way. I don't want a criteria here. So we want to make sure that when we're creating an advanced filter without a criteria, notice this is empty. This is an advanced filter. Make sure you delete the criteria first using names criteria delete. If that criteria doesn't exist on the sheet, it will create an error. So therefore we wrap this in on error resume next and on error go to 0. And that's how we ensure that it gets deleted. Now we're ready to create our advanced filter. Starting in E2, just column E. All I'm focused on is teams, which is column E. So I'm going to create just only column E, and I want those results of unique, and I want to place them directly inside AE2. And that's all we need to do. Unique equals true. Very important here because I only want those unique. That's all we need to do. So I just need to run this macro only when we add a new team. And that's exactly what we're going to do now. Project, add employee, or team. We're going to add this one. We're focused on adding a team. Remember, we have the ability to add a specific team. If I want to go in here, that team that I just created called framing team, and I want to add it, all I need to do is click add. It's going to add those same members to that. So how do we do that? How do we add a team to that just with a single click of a button? Well, that's with a macro called project, add employee, or team. Now we're going to use the same macro for add employee or team. If I want to add a single employee, I can do that here. Name, and notice how the drop-down list changes. Now we can add a single employee. Did you see that? It looked kind of weird. It was fast. If I change this from name to team, the data validation list, notice it looks at its teams. it changed from teams to employees. So how do we do that? Well, that is based on a change event. If I make a change to F3 based on the value, team, or name, I want the data validation to change from names or from teams. It allows us to create a lot of functionality in just a few different cells. So how do we do that? Well, it's going to be based on the change event based on F3. So let's take a look at that inside our skills matrix. And we're focused on the change event of F3, add employee by change. So if the user makes a change to F3, then we want to do something. Anytime we change validation like we're doing here in E4, the first thing we want to do is delete the validation and also delete the contents of that cell. So to do that, inside E4, validation delete, we're deleting the validation. And what I also want to do is clear the contents. So that's going to first thing. So regardless of whether they've selected team or whether they've selected name, we're going to delete the validation. The next thing is if F3 equals team, then what we want to do is add a unique value. I'm going to run the macro. Here's that macro we just went over called get unique teams. This is going to run a macro that's going to update those teams based on that. So as soon as we change this to team, it's going to update the macro so that we have an updated macro that's going to make sure that the team names here are automatically updated. So once we do that, then what I want to do is add the validation. It's the same thing. We don't need to do that. So it's the same thing as if we were going through data validation here. And basically I'm going to do this through, I'm adding teams here, right? Both based on both of those teams, right? These teams here. And the error alert information or whatever you want on the error alert. So I need to add that to that, but we're going to use VBA to do that. So E4, validation, we're adding a list type of validation. Alert style can be anything on what you can do, informational or stop. Formula is equal to make sure it's the equals, make sure you're adding that equals, and the teams, which is the named range. Else, employee, adding staff, let's put employee name. We're adding individual employee names in this one. In this case, we're going to add the validation the same one. Alert style can be the same or different. Formula equals employee name. This way, we're adding employee name list. So when I select name here, instead, you will see that the validation will change inside the data validation here, and it's going to be changed to, if we say the list, employee name. That's how we do it. Now all we need to do is just have a single macro that can add an employee, a single employee based on the name selected. Or we can add and I want to make sure that if we add, if the name already exists, like it does, let the user know the employee already exists. So that is the next macro that we're going to go over. Okay, so let's go back in here. Let's make sure we finished up that here, add employee or team. So this is called project add employee or team. That is the one that I want to go over. So if we look in here, let's make sure we finished up everything on this skills matrix here. So we just added 2 evaluations. So this is all we need to do for adding those evaluations. Just simply basically clearing out the validation. We're adding either the team validation or we're adding name. That's it. That's all we have to do here. Inside our project work, now what we want to do is add employee or team. Add employee or team. That's what we want to go over. How do we know? First thing I want to do is I want to see if F3 is empty. I need to know, are we adding an employee name? I want to make sure that F3 is not empty because we got to know what are we going to be adding. Are we adding a team or are we adding a name? So first thing, F3, checking into F3, make sure that's not empty. Please select add employee by option. Okay, so we're just going to tell the user to check that. Exit sub. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to get the last employee row, whether we're going to be adding a team or whether we're adding an employee. I need to know what the last row is, and I need to know the first available row, in this case 13. Okay, so the last employee row is going to be the last row with value. Set the last employee row, or it's going to be called first available row. Okay, so we have that. Now what I want to do is if we're adding a name, here, however, if it's F3, however, if E4 is empty, E4 would be whatever name we're trying to add, right? Then, like for example, if I try to click name here and it's empty, I want to let the user know, hey, please select an employee. There's no name to add. So that would mean E4 would be empty. So if E4 is empty, let the user know, please select an employee to add. Okay, so exiting the sub, we can't add anything if they haven't added a name. Next thing, assuming that they have added a name, I want to check for a duplicate name. Does the name exist in this list already? I can't add a name, like you said before, if Fred already exists. We need that note to come up and let us know that Fred's already been added. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to set an employee range. We already have this defined as a range. We're going to set that found employee range. It's going to be based on the E9 through the last employee row. we're going to find, I'm looking for that. I want to find whatever's in E4. I'm going to look in this range here. And I'm going to look for this, E4. If it's found in this, let the user know. How do we know if it's been found? If not found is nothing. Remember, the two negatives cancel each other out. That means it has been found. The employee already exists within the list below. Exit the sub out. We won't allow them to put duplicate employees in. But if it's not, then all we need to do is take whatever's in E4 and place it in the first available row inside E in the column. That's it. Add employee to list. Else, if that would be in team, if it's a team, F3 is equal to team. In that case, we need to do also, again, the last row. In this case, I want to know the last row of the employees here. I'm adding a team, right? In this case, I want to know all the employees of that team. How are we going to know? Well, with the project employees, if we're adding a team, I want to know the last row. I'm going to run an advanced filter. And I want to know all of the employees based on whatever team that's selected. How do we know what team? Well, if I select team here, and then I select any team here, such as framing, then I want to set, this should be the criteria of framing. So if we go back in employees, we see we have a criteria here based on a formula, based on the skill matrix E4. That is our team. So we have our criteria. Then all we need to do is simply get the results here, and our results are going to be here. And then all we have is the total skill rating. So that's how we do it. So all I need to do, I'll go over the skill rating soon. So we're going to determine the last row if it's less than 3 exits. So we're going to run an advanced filter so we can extract all the employees on that specific team. All the way from A2 through E, we only extracting, I only want to know the employee name, and all the way through E. I only need this information. I don't need the rest. So our original data is simply going to be from A2 through E and down. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to have those results come in all the way from AH all the way through AI. That's all we need to be concerned about here. So our results here are going to be AH through AI is where we want that results. AH through AI is where we want them to come out. Let's just update that. AH2 through AI2, right? We want to make sure the criteria range should be AF, there we go, AF3, that's what I wanted. And the results here are going to come into AH2 through AI. So the criteria simply is AF2 through AF3. That's our correct criteria. Then all we need to do is get the last row based on the results. That last row is going to be based on column AH. If the last results row is less than 3, then exit sub. There's no results. Then all I want to do is bring this information here and bring it directly inside here. Bring it right there here. And of course, it's going to be based on either the rate or the staff position based on whatever the current formula is. So that's how we do it. E in the last employee row, and E in the last employee row plus the last results row minus 3, basically the total rows. I need to know the total rows here. So the last employee row, this 6 minus 3 is going to get us our total rows here. So that's all we need to do, last minus 6, because that's going to get us. So we know that it's 6. So I want to bring in the basically 4 rows of data, bringing it directly into here and adding it on. So if I wanted to add this team again or something like that, or we had a new project, let's say we add a project here and I wanted a different team, I can simply add the different team, a different team like this, and add them too. Okay, so that's how we add the teams. That's easy. And then of course, saving the project and loading the project back up. That's going to bring everything and it's going to add those teams. So adding employees or adding teams, very easy with a click of a button. Now, what if I want to remove employees? What if I want to take this and I want to remove this employee and remove this employee? How do I do that? Well, we've got a macro that's assigned that. I need to know, of course, which selected row. I need to know that we've selected employee row in B8. So we need to make sure that we have that row. And I also want to see if there's a database row here located in AM. So we need to delete the employee from the project. So that's going to be the macro that's been assigned to that shape called project remove employees. So if we're going to focus on the skills matrix, we need to make sure that we've selected a row, B8. If that's empty, we need to let the user know to please select an employee to remove. And then if it's not empty, what we'll do is we'll add in that to a variable called employee row. What I'm going to do then is determine the database row, making sure that's in column AM in the employee row. That's the database row. As long as that's not empty, we can put that into a variable called project employee database row. Then all I need to do is delete it. So basically, if I want to delete this employee, I need to extract that row, 84 here. And that's going to be in the project employees down here in 84. So I want to remove that, Mark Mason, from that one. then I got to know the row to know which one to delete. So if I click delete here and mark, it's going to make sure to clear that row out. Notice 84 has been clear, so I need to know that row. That row is going to come directly from 84. And then what I want to do is I want to hide that button, and I want to load the project again. So deleting employee here, we have one, deleting it, and then we're going to reload the project and then hide the button. That's all we need to do for removing employee. Okay, cool. Just the macro. Now remember, we have a really cool macro right here called add the optimal staff. Let me remove this. And so let's say I've got 3 different particular skills to this. So we got 3 different skills here. Now I want you to know how many staff. Let's say we were going to have 5 staff on this. I'm going to save that project. So I know that we need 5 staff, but I want the 5 best staff for these 3 skills. I'm going to click generate optimal staff, and it's going to automatically generate the 5 best staff based on that. So how did we do that? Well, the first thing I need to know is who is the best staff for these 3 skills, right? I need to know who's the beta based on their ratings. So we can do that with a formula. In fact, we're going to use a formula. So inside this last column, what I have is called a sum product formula. And basically what I want to do is determine which staff. I want to load the total skill rating based on alt, which is 23. If we take a look inside these 3 skills here, I should use them in order here. Let's take a look inside the skill matrix. So we have sanitation, plumbing, and welding, 9, 6, and 9, right? So let's take a look at the first employee, sanitation, plumbing, and welding inside the employees. So inside this here, if we take a look in plumbing and welding, we have 3 of them. So I should use them in order a little bit. So here we got plumbing 8, sanitation 9, and welding 6. So that's 23. This is pretty good here, actually. Sanitation, right? So I want to know sanitation 9, welding 6, that's 15, and plumbing is 8, so 23. I want the total score, this is a great formula, based on only those particular skills that are listed here based on this range right here. So for all the skills, I need to know the score for that employee. In this case, the employee has 23. If I add another skill, it's going to change the dynamics of that, right? If I add lighting, it's going to change that. Now, if we look back on employees, now it's 33, right? Because his score for that matrix of lighting has a 10. So if we look inside, and we look inside lighting, we see 10, so it's been added. So we know that. So what is that formula? So basically, we're going to use sum product, and we're looking for is number, right? I want to turn these into 1s and 0s. That's why I use the double negative. And we're looking for is the number. I'm going to run a match, right? This match is going to be based on H2. So the lookup value I'm going to be looking up is from H2 through AA2. I'm looking up for all of these skills based on this header column, starting in H2 all the way through AA2. So all these skills. And what I'm going to look it up, and the array that I'm looking it up is based on the arrays from G6 to Z6. This is our skills range inside the matrix. And I want an exact match. Okay. Once I have that, what I want to do is I want to total it based on the array in H3 through AA3. These are the scores that are located in that row, H3 through AA3, right? In that particular row, row 3. Notice the rows don't have the new $sign, right? So that way when I drag this one, we can use this for every single employee. But notice these are absolute. We have absolute here and we have absolute here. But this last one is going to be, we want to sum based on whatever row we're on. And what that's going to do is going to produce the total. It's going to basically count or sum all of the scores for only those skills that are based on this range here. A great formula. Once I know those totals, I can then run the sort in VBA. So then all I need to do is just bring this formula down here, and it's going to give me the totals for every employee. Once I do that, all I need to do is then run a sort. Run an advanced filter based on that. So now what I want to do is I want to know all of those, and I want to sort based on the skills. So if I then have all of our employees come here, including their position or amount, then what I do is I run a sort inside VBA based on the highest score all the way to the lowest score. And if I know that I need 5 employees for the particular job, all I need to do is pull those 5 first employees and bring them directly inside here, or however many employees you have, and bring them directly inside here. And that's just what we've done. So from Jack all the way to Greg, and bringing all those employees in here, from Jack all the way to Greg, bringing those employees directly in here. So that happens with just a macro. Relatively easy once we have that formula. So first thing we want to do is know the last, based on the last employee row. If the last employer is greater than 8, we want to do is we want to remove any existing employees. We want to let the user know, I don't want to do this if there's already employees to load. So I want to make sure to let the user know, if there's existing employees, please remove any existing employees or create a new project and add optimal staff. So this is really for new projects or projects that don't have any staff associated with them. And we can do that right here. This project, we have all of our projects, so we can create a new project too. But so that's how we do. So we just want to make sure that there's no current employees that have been selected. And also what I want to make sure is if W4 is less than 1, I want to make sure to please add 1 required staff. How many staff are we going to add? Well, W4 is going to tell us that. We need to make sure that this has a value. How many staff should we add? 6, 5, or whatever. So we need to put that in here. Also, there we go. I want to make sure that G6 is not empty. What is in G6? I want to make sure that there's at least a skill. This should be G, right? I want to make sure that G6 is not empty. There has to be at least 1 skill, right? We need to know. So let the user know, please add at least 1 skill before generating the optimal staff. Okay, assuming that all those conditions have been met, we can then run it. We need to know the staff quantity. That's going to be based on W4. How many staff should we be adding? Now we're going to focus primarily on the employees. Again, we're deleting a criteria. And why are we deleting it? Because I'm going to run an advanced filter. And I want those results to come here inside here. But I don't have any criteria. I want basically all the employees. That way we can keep the original data the same. And we just need to run the sort. So I'm going to bring all the employees, no criteria. So to do that, I want to make sure to delete any existing criteria. I'm going to determine the last row running an advanced filter from A2 all the way through AB. No criteria. No, this is blank. No criteria. We're copying it to AH2 through AJ, and we want unique results. Oh, the last row is less. If the last results row is less than 3, then exit the sub, although it shouldn't be. Okay, now we're ready for our sort. Remember, I said we want to sort based on the total skill rating. So we need to clear any existing sorts, and we're going to add a key based on AJ3. And I'm going to sort on those values and sort descending. I want the highest at the top and the lowest at the bottom, sorting on normal. Then we're going to set that range to AH3 all the way through AJ in the last results row. We're going to apply that. Then what I need to do is I need to bring in the data, but not all the data. I only want to know if it's based on, 6 or however many we did. I want to bring in that data based on the quantity of staff that are required, the top X quantity. So E9 through F, that's going to bring in right here, E9 here through F and all the way down, but how many down? Based on the staff quantity. It's going to be based solely on that. So E9 through F9, right, plus the staff quantity minus 1. That's going to get us the total staff that we need to bring over. And then what we want to do is A3 through AI and 3 and plus the staff quantity minus 1. And that's going to bring all the staff over. Okay, great. So now that brings all the staff over, then all we need to do is simply save the project and load the project. That's automatically going to bring in these values for that. That's it. That's all we have to do to automatically generate optimal staff based on their highest minimums, based on the highest score. And that way we have this automatically done. Okay, great. But what about save as a team? Remember, I said when we have a team, if we have, let's say we have a few projects, we want to save this as a team. We want to create a special team. We saw that work a few times. Clicking this button is going to save these employees as their own unique team. So how are we going to do that? Well, with this macro right here called skills matrix. Okay, so for this one, what we're going to be doing is we're going to focus on, I want to make sure that F5 equals team name if it equals team name or it's empty, right? If this F5 equals team name, which is the default, that we don't want that, or it's empty, we need to let the user know to make sure that we have added a team name. Please select a team name on that. Have to put in a team name on that. So then we just let the user know and then exit the sub out. Assuming that they do have added a team name, we're going to select it here. Now all I want to do is make sure that they want to update, right? Update all of the team names for those particular employees. So we want to do that with a message box. If message box, are you sure you want to save all the employees to team? And then we'll put in whatever team name it is. We've already defined that variable here in a string variable. Yes, no, or if it's no, then we're going to exit the sub. We just give them a chance to exit out of it. Assuming that they do want it, we're going to set the last employee row. I need to loop through all the employees. right? The last one being 13, I need to determine the employee database row. And inside this database row, once we have it, we're going to go inside the team name, which is located in column E, and make that an update. So that's what we're going to do inside the code. So we're going to run that loop for 9 to the last employee row. We're going to get that if for some reason that employee database is empty. If it does not equal empty, we know we have a database row. We're going to set the employee database row to whatever's in AN. We're going to update column E of the employee database. We're going to update it to that new team name. And we're going to go to the next. So we're going to loop through all the employees to do just that. And then what I want to do is I want to run that macro to get unique teams, right? Once we've updated that, getting that unique teams, running that to make sure. And then what I'm saying, if F3 equals team, then I want to set that team name to F4. I just want to make sure that if they've created it, I want to kind of let them know and say, okay, that team name is now located right here, right? So I save it as a team name. So let's just do this. Let's just call this plumbing. Maybe we have a plumbing team and we want to save that as a team. I want that team name. Yes, I do want to save it. And it's going to put that plumbing directly in here. So we see that. And now if we look under each of the employees, we have plumbing, 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 plumbing. Okay, so it's already been saved up. So we now have that. We've also run the macro. So we have that plumbing here. We can do that. All right, so now we've updated that team. So F3 is going to take on that team name. F5 is going to be team name, set the default text back, right? We want to set that default text back. And that is it. That is all we have to do. All right, what an incredible training this has been. We have learned so much. We've gone over lots of conditional formatting. We've learned how to save a project, add new project, delete a project. Basically, we've learned how to add and remove employees or teams, how to create brand new teams, how to load projects, use conditional formatting, how to automatically generate the optimal staff using a sum product formula and clicking one button and adding those staff based on the staff. We've had adding skills, finding skills, removing skills, and how to use this, and of course, conditional formatting inside the table and outside the table. It has been a really incredible training. Thank you so much for joining me on this training. I do appreciate it. If you do like these trainings, great ways to support us are joining our Patreon. So much going on there. You won't want to miss those updated trainings and recordings. Even on this one, I'll be doing one next Monday. If you want your features added on to this, join our Patreon, make your suggestions, and I'll be making those updates accordingly. All right, thanks so much, and we'll see you next week.